Chapter 1091. Hearing that, the blood demon wolf grinned and said, "Black Jiao, your words are really interesting. We agreed before that the two juniors would fight to decide the winner of this battle, but you didn't set any other restrictions. How is the summoning god's secret technique of my clan's juniors not counted as personal strength? Could it be that when fighting against a strong enemy, you wouldn't use such a technique?" The summoning god's secret technique was definitely a taboo existence in the Tianwu world. Just like when Guan Zhaoshan summoned anyone, what she did was no different from sacrificing herself to summon an evil god. The orthodox gods of the Tianwu world actually didn't exist at all. Regardless of whether it was the Yin gods worshipped by the various empires, the northern frontier god system, or the grassland wolf god system, they were all considered wild gods. Even in the age of chaos like his previous world, it would take hundreds of years for them to slowly evolve into a true mythical system. In a world like the Tianwu world that had a cultivation system, gods? Weren't they just some strong cultivators or monsters? However, there were a few of them, but they couldn't be considered gods. It was just that when humans were still being oppressed by the demonic beasts, a few leaders had appeared. However, due to the fragmentation of the world and the interference of the protectors of the Heaven Gate, even after humans had dominated the Heaven Martial world, there were still no legendary figures like the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. Therefore, from a formal point of view, even Lin Yuan can be regarded as a wild god. If he is like the shadow demon Su Yan, and his style of doing things is a little strange and evil, then he can even be regarded as an evil god. But in such a big environment, there were still many summoning god's secret techniques. That was to offer sacrifices to summon a god to assist the summoning god in battle. The strength of the gods was different. Some would give the summoning god some buffs, some would send down a projection to directly kill a strong enemy. Different gods naturally had different requirements. The stronger the god, the bigger the appetite. Moreover, the number of sacrifices was determined by the rules and rituals, and might not necessarily correspond to the god's needs. For example, when Guan Zhaoshan summoned Lin Yuan, it was already considered a high-level ritual, and the sacrifice was Guan Zhaoshan herself. Because from the moment Lin Yuan descended, that woman had been completely erased, and could no longer be reincarnated. Dariachi's summoning god's secret technique might not be as extreme as Guan Zhaoshan's, but it was still a technique of the wolf race. Even Lin Yuan had to be cautious. After a while, a figure slowly formed. With just a cursory glance, one would think that the illusory image looked like an elephant. However, as the illusory image continued to solidify, one could see that the elephant was covered in dark golden dragon scales. There was also a pair of horns on its head. It looked mighty and extraordinary. Dragon Elephant Demonic King? A great demon who had left a legend on the Frost Mirror Grassland suddenly flashed in Lin Yuan's mind. He was also a great demon of the grassland who could compete with the grassland wolves at that time under the rule of the grassland wolves. It was said that he had the blood of the Crescent Elephant clan and the Dragon clan. He was born with extraordinary strength and had mastered some secret techniques that only the Dragon clan possessed. He was an extremely powerful demon king. However, with the disappearance of the wolf race of the grassland, the Dragon Elephant Demon King also disappeared in the long river of history. Now, it seemed that the archenemy of the wolf race of the grassland was also in the same boat as the wolf race of the hidden world. Although the summoning mystic technique was rare, there were many people or monsters who secretly practiced it. Even in the world of Lin Yuan's previous life, there were still various kinds of summoning immortals and divine fighting techniques. Although it was not the orthodox way of cultivation, it was also the best among the unorthodox methods. However, the wolf race of the hidden world was too shameless. Dariachi and the 13th Prince's cultivation were about the same. The confrontation between the two of them should be based on their own means. However, Dariachi actually used such a secret technique to summon a projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King after he was seriously injured. Wasn't this clearly showing that he was bullying the 13th Prince? In other words, this battle was a trap that the 13th Prince had prepared for him from the very beginning. No matter who he sent out, Lin Yuan couldn't do it personally because of Dariachi's seniority. Naturally, people like Batu and Kagura couldn't do it either. However, if he chose to send out a junior who was in the late stage of the heaven realm, regardless of the outcome, it would be equivalent to facing a projection of the dragon elephant demon king. Although he didn't know how much power this projection had inherited from the real body, it was definitely not easy to deal with. Lin Yuan's gaze was piercingly cold. Suddenly, he opened his mouth and a green light swept out. In the blink of an eye, it had already broken through the restrictions of time and space and appeared above the 13th prince's head. Summoning God's secret technique? The 13th prince's gaze turned slightly. He slowly raised his right hand and smiled sinisterly. If that's the case, I won't hold back. As soon as he finished speaking, a round phantom that was wrapped in gray fog suddenly appeared behind the 13th prince. There seemed to be 6 grooves on the round phantom. However, at this moment, only a scarlet gem and a gloomy gem were embedded in them. The other 4 grooves were empty. The dragon elephant demon king, who had just finished condensing, had a solemn expression. Although he didn't know what kind of means this junior in front of him had used, even he couldn't help but tremble slightly at this moment. It was as if that round phantom was an extremely terrifying treasure. At this moment, a green light suddenly appeared in the sky above the 13th prince's head. When it didn't move, it revealed the appearance of a willow branch. In the next moment, absolute heaven connection and plain seal. The moment the willow branch appeared, this part of the world was suddenly sealed abruptly. The interference from the outside world couldn't penetrate the space barrier formed by the willow branch. After all, it was born in the primordial chaos and was formed by the law of space. Even in the eldritch world, there might not be many people who could break through such a seal, let alone the natives of the Tianwu world. More importantly, there was a price to pay for summoning a secret technique. Darya Chi, the dragon elephant demon king and the blood wolf demon king had obviously come prepared. The method to summon the dragon elephant demon king's projection must have been a method that they had prepared beforehand. After Darya Chi summoned the dragon elephant demon king's projection, he didn't seem to be affected at all. Obviously, there were only 2 possibilities. One was that the hidden wolf tribe had already completed this series of rituals and imitated the unorthodox talisman technique to seal this set of rituals. When necessary, the user would activate the talisman technique to summon the sealed dragon elephant demon king's projection. However, the possibility of this was not high. It was still a mystery who the northern frontier would send out to fight, and the energy sealed in the talisman technique was quite limited. Chapter 1092. As the most outstanding member of the younger generation of the hidden werewolf tribe, Darya Chi had the name of Suppress. Hence, once he had to summon the projection of the dragon elephant demon king, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. This also proved that the enemy was very strong. Hence, it was impossible to seal up much energy with just talisman techniques. If the enemy could not be dealt a fatal blow before the energy was depleted, the hidden werewolf tribe would be the ones to lose in the end. Lose? This option was absolutely unacceptable to the hidden werewolf tribe, who would do anything to win and even bully the weak. Therefore, the current situation was very obvious. The hidden wolf clan should have used some kind of taboo method during the summoning ritual to transfer the price that Darya Chi should have paid to other people or demonic beasts. It was only under such circumstances that Darya Chi could summon the dragon elephant demon king without being affected. But now, absolute heavenly connection, dimensional seal. In this sealed world, before the 13th prince, Darya Chi, and the dragon elephant demon king fought to the death, unless Lin Yuan took the initiative to retrieve the willow branch, the external forces would not be able to affect this world at all. The price of summoning the projection of the dragon elephant demon king would also be borne by Darya Chi himself. Black Jiao, how dare you interfere in this battle? The blood werewolf tribe's expression changed. It stared at Lin Yuan fiercely again. Lin Yuan remained silent. He only turned his head slowly and his gaze met the blood werewolf tribes for a moment. However, it was only for a moment because the moment Lin Yuan turned his head, the blood werewolf tribe suddenly felt a sense of fear. It had a premonition that if it continued to speak, this Black Jiao would definitely make it pay an unimaginable price. Lin Yuan stared at the blood demon wolf with its head lowered for a moment. Suddenly, he swung his tail, and the picture of the sealed world appeared not far in front of him again, like a projector. At this moment, Lin Yuan said slowly, "Previously, when you came to look for this king, you wanted to have a bet between the younger generation. This king gave you a chance because it was not easy for the grassland werewolf tribe to have a long history. Now that you want to bully the younger generation, this king will not hold it against you." "What? Are you saying that the dragon elephant demon king is not enough? Is there anyone else who wants to join the battle?" Speaking of this, Lin Yuan changed the topic, and his murderous aura overflowed. He growled, "In my opinion, let's not gamble anymore. Tomorrow, I will lead the army to the Frost Mirror grassland. Even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground, I will exterminate your grassland wolf clan." The blood werewolf tribe opened its mouth. No one knew what it was thinking at this moment, but it became strangely silent. In the image before them, Daryachi was already seriously injured. In addition, after the dimension was sealed, all the energy used to summon the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection fell on him. His face was pale and his breathing was weak. Obviously, if Daryachi continued to maintain the existence of the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection, he would probably exhaust himself to death even without the 13th prince's help. Lin Yuan's gaze shifted slightly. Even if Daryachi did not care about his own life, he could only maintain the existence of the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection for 5 breaths. However, he did not even intend to admit defeat. This also meant that they probably thought that the Dragon Elephant Demon King's projection would be able to kill the 13th prince within these 5 breaths. At that time, even if both sides were to perish together, Daryachi would die in his hands. On the other hand, the 13th prince would be killed by the projection. If they were to be calculative, the northern region was indeed at a disadvantage. On the other side, the northern frontier is a good move. The Dragon Elephant Demon King's gaze shifted slightly and landed on the 13th prince. He said in a deep voice, "However, this dimension is sealed. Although I can't break it, I guess you can't do anything either? It seems that the Black Jiao is really careless. He dares to let a junior like you be sealed in this dimension with me. It seems that you are not that important to the Black Jiao." When he spoke up to hear, a bright light flashed in the Dragon Elephant King's eyes, and he said with a smile, "Why don't you join my clan? I can guarantee that the Black WM will absolutely be unable to harm you at all." The 13th prince smiled and shook his head. The reincarnation disc behind him rotated again and a black light shot towards the Dragon Elephant Demon King. The Dragon Elephant Demon King narrowed his eyes. After all, he was a grand demon king who had been famous for many years. He had also worked together with the Hidden Wolf tribe to harvest the faith of the people of the Frost Mirror grassland. Although he had not reached the limit of what the Tianwu world could bear, he was still much stronger than an ordinary demon king. With a single glance, it was able to discern that this black light was probably not easy to block. Especially the resentment and baleful aura contained within the black light. It was something that even it feared like a tiger. Once it was tainted by it, this projection of its would probably collapse in less than 3 breaths of time. If it was even more serious, it might even injure its main body and cripple a few hundred years of bitter cultivation. Boom! The Dragon Elephant Demon King let out a furious roar. Boundless blood chi burst out from his illusory body. In the blink of an eye, the blood chi collided with the black light and was struck down. When it fell to the ground, it had already turned into a pool of viscous liquid. What a powerful black light! The moment they exchanged blows, the Dragon Elephant Demon King made a rough judgment. After all, he had lived for so many years. Even if he did not have enough incense to make a qualitative change in his strength, his experience could not be faked. In a flash, the Dragon Elephant Demon King looked at the reincarnation disc behind the 13th prince with a hint of greed in his eyes. He could tell that the Black Jiao had isolated this part of the world not because he was worried that the Grassland Wolf tribe would have other backup plans, but because he was worried that the Dragon Elephant Demon King would notice the abnormality of the reincarnation disc and choose to escape. The Black Jiao had evil intentions. At the beginning of this battle, it was hard to tell what the Dragon Elephant Demon King's mentality was. However, when the grassland wolf tribe shamelessly invited the dragon elephant demon king to deal with the 13th prince, the Black Jiao had already made up his mind. No matter what the outcome of this battle was, the Black Jiao would order his subordinates to destroy the grassland wolf tribe. Even if the dragon elephant demon king saw through this and refused to participate in the battle and become an enemy of the Black Jiao, it would not have an easy time. Once the dragon elephant demon king was contaminated by the black light from the reincarnation disk, it would definitely hurt its body. There were even some other mysteries that the dragon elephant demon king had not discovered yet. However, this part of the world was still sealed. Even if he had other ideas, he had to brace himself and finish this battle. Otherwise, if Dariachi could not hold on any longer, he would be able to escape. However, when he returned to his original body, the grassland werewolf tribe would not let him off easily. Chapter 1093. However, wasn't there a great opportunity in the midst of great danger? The dragon elephant demon king did not know that the stone plate behind the 13th prince was formed by the chi of the netherworld. It was the reincarnation plate that gathered the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation. Only the Azura path and the Hungry Ghost path were left in the 6 paths. Therefore, the reincarnation plate's power was at most 40%. Otherwise, a mere projection would be destroyed in an instant. However, in the dragon elephant demon king's opinion, the stone plate was definitely a supreme weapon. It was precisely because of the stone plate that Black Jiao was at ease to let the 13th prince fight Dariachi and himself. However, the 13th prince was only in the advanced Heaven Dipper realm. In the eyes of the dragon elephant demon king, he was nothing. If he could kill the 13th prince here and take the stone plate, the grassland wolf tribe might not be the ones in charge in the Frost Mirror grassland. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly exploded between the heavens and the earth. The dragon elephant demon king had a unique bloodline and his divine power was unparalleled. With the help of the incense, even if he was just a projection, the power that he could unleash in an instant was extremely terrifying. Ignoring Dariachi's feelings, the dragon elephant demon king stepped on the ground and his body flashed. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the 13th prince. The 13th prince's expression did not change. However, he retreated and the reincarnation plate spun again. Black and red radiance shot out and collided with the dragon elephant demon king. The dragon elephant demon king's blood boiled. He did not dodge or avoid the reincarnation plate. He did not care that his body might be injured. However, his speed was slowed down. Even so, he was still moving towards the 13th prince. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Every step he took was like a bolt of lightning descending and the mountains and rivers collapsing. Dragon elephant demon king, Haribari has learned a lesson. The 13th prince's expression did not change. He put his palms together and a huge Dharma form that was wrapped in a gray deathly aura appeared behind him. This was similar to the Azura King Dharma body that Lin Yuan summoned during his battle with Lin Yuan. For an existence at the level of the master of the 6 paths, once he summoned his Dharma body, it meant that the following battle would be a battle of life and death. The Hungry Ghost Dharma body condensed, and the world around Haribari was suddenly dyed with a layer of pitch-black color. In the next moment, Haribari suddenly pushed out with both hands, and endless black light shot out from the palms of the Dharma body that was over 100 feet tall. Every ray of black light contained an extremely terrifying devouring power, but in this strange scene, the black hungry ghost power was as dazzling as shooting stars. The illusory image and the Dharma idol were on par with each other. On one side, the power of the hungry ghosts circled around like a meteor shower, constantly corroding the relatively normal world on the other side. On the other side, the power of blood chi erupted and transformed into countless illusory images of dragons and elephants formed by blood chi, which continuously collided with the black meteor. For a short period of time, it seemed that they were evenly matched, with neither side able to do anything to the other. However, the blood demon wolves that were watching the battle had extremely ugly expressions. This was because ever since the world was sealed, the price of summoning the projection of the dragon elephant demon king had been borne by Dariachi. It seemed that Dariachi could at most hold on for 3 more breaths of time. This also meant that after 3 breaths of time, the projection of the Dragon Elephant Demon King would definitely collapse, and Dariachi would definitely die in the sacrificial ceremony. At this stage of the battle, they were already the losers. How lively! A somewhat frivolous voice sounded. Immediately, the reincarnation disc that had also become extremely huge behind the hungry ghost Dharma body bloomed with red light. In the next moment, an illusory figure wearing a blood-red robe appeared. No, it was not blood red, but the dark brown color of dried blood. This fellow was originally wearing a snow-white robe, but after countless killings, he allowed the blood of the dead to splash on his white robe and dye it this color. This fellow is very dangerous. The blood demon wolf made a judgment almost immediately. After all, from the Heaven Star border realm onwards, cultivators would have a protective chi around them even when they were unconscious. Unless the other party had the bloodline of some divine beast, otherwise, the powerless blood would not be able to pass through the protective chi and land on the body. Unless the other party wanted to do so and intentionally caused such a situation. Therefore, this person was either a lunatic or a bloodthirsty pervert. Oh! The illusory youth glanced at the hungry ghost Dharma body and smiled. It seems that you are the hungry ghost Dharma body's master? That's great. I thought I would have to be alone for a long time. I didn't expect a new companion to join me so soon. Hungry ghost Dharma body's master? The blood demon wolf's expression changed as it looked at the illusory youth in disbelief. The 13th prince was such a terrifying existence, and this Black Jiao actually had another subordinate? No, not just one. The blood chi demonic wolf looked fearfully at the 4 grooves above the stone plate. If it guessed correctly, the 13th prince, the hungry ghost Dharma body's master, corresponded to the gray gemstone, and this illusory youth represented the red gemstone. Even though it could not sense the aura in the sealed world, the blood demon wolf could still feel that the 2 gemstones were extremely dangerous and filled with an ominous aura. And there were actually 4 of such existences? Existences in the Heaven Star border realm who were not at a disadvantage in the Demon King realm? And there were 6 of them. The northern frontier. No, the power behind the Black Jiao, how powerful was it? The Grassland Wolf tribe had also established a divine system. They had originally thought that Black Jiao, who had just established the northern frontier divine system, would not be able to compare with them. However, Black Jiao himself, together with the 2 northern frontier gods, Batu and Kagura, had already reached a level that was on par with the blood demon wolf tribe. What would happen if he were to find 6 more existences like the 13th prince and the illusory youth? In the entire Tianwu world, other than the Endless Sea and the Elysium Guardians, who else could be a match for the northern frontier? A sense of despair arose inexplicably and instantly enveloped the blood demon wolf. When the blood demon wolf looked at the Black Jiao again, a look of reverence appeared on its face. However, no matter how shocked it was, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes did not waver. Obviously, all of this was within his expectations. Even the possibility that the Dragon Elephant Demon King would come was probably detected by the Black Jiao the moment the blood demon wolf proposed the wager. Therefore, the one who accepted the challenge was the 13th prince, the hungry ghost Dharma body's master. Lord Dragon King, we admit defeat. From today onwards, the blood chi demon wolf swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty and said. Chapter 1094. There's no need for that. This king has never been interested in your bet. Lin Yuan suddenly interrupted the blood demon wolf. Then he said slowly, while you're wasting your time with this king, I'm guessing that the Shuangjian dynasty's army has already been defeated by the Great Wall of the Northern Frontier. However, you don't have to worry. The Northern Frontier's army won't be able to enter the Frost Mirror Grasslands so quickly. He won't send out a nameless army. Won't send out a nameless army? The blood demon wolf's expression changed. All of a sudden, it recalled the Black Flood Dragon's inexplicable actions. He had actually disregarded the friendship between the North and the Hengduan Mountains and directly marched into the Hengduan Mountains. He had even ignored the covetous heavenly demons of the Central Plains and the invading Frost Mirror cavalry outside the Great Wall and gathered a large number of troops to wage war against the Monster King's court. From a strategic point of view, Black Jiao's actions were absolutely stupid. After all, no matter how the Hengduan mountain range changed, it was impossible for them to fall out with the northern frontier. After all, the actual ruler of the northern frontier was Black Jiao. Therefore, the Black Flood Dragon's previous actions were as stupid as turning around and punching his ally in the face instead of thinking about how to fight the enemy when facing a powerful enemy. However, the Blood Demon Wolf didn't think so anymore. Although the army of the northern region had suffered some losses in the Hengduan Mountains, both sides ended the farce in an extremely absurd manner before the real battle began. More importantly, due to the concealment of some strange forces, no one knew what had happened in the Hengduan Mountains during that period of time. However, everyone knew that the northern frontier settled the dispute with the Hengduan mountain range and severely injured the demon venerable of the southern wilderness. Not only did they destroy the Yun country's army, but they also uprooted the entire Yun country's imperial court. Even the new king of the Yun country was a young man who was adopted from a side branch of the imperial family instead of the original imperial family. In this chaos, he even destroyed the secret alliance between the demon venerable of the southern wilderness and the Yun country. Driven by greed, the demon venerable of the southern wilderness attacked a large number of the Yun country's territories. The Qing River Empire was trembling, and the Sky Demon Army seemed to be sleepwalking then. After the northern frontier readied their armaments, their first target would definitely be the Shuangjian dynasty. However, if the northern frontier didn't make a move at this time, who would? The demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range. Previously, when the Shenwu dynasty was still around, the Shuangjian dynasty sent troops to loot a burning house and suffered heavy casualties. This time, when they attacked the northern frontier, they suffered heavy casualties under the northern frontier's Great Wall. It could be said that all the tribes on the grassland had no soldiers left except for those who hadn't reached adulthood and were too old to ride horses. If the demonic beast tide broke out at this time, it would definitely be a tragic massacre. At that time, the demonic beasts would wreak havoc on the Frost Mirror grassland, and the northern frontier would send troops to the Shuangjian dynasty to drive the demonic beasts away. What else could be more justifiable than this? They couldn't expect the neighboring Deadwood Empire to send troops to support the Shuangjian dynasty, could they? To put it bluntly, the Deadwood Empire and the Shuangjian dynasty had been enemies for generations. The possibility of them sending troops to support the Shuangjian dynasty was probably not much higher than the possibility of the southern wilderness demonic beast range returning the Yun nation territory to Zhaoyu. In addition, Lin Yuan still had the 13th prince as his trump card. When the demonic beasts were repelled, the 13th prince would step up and inherit the throne. On the surface, the structure of the seven empires would still be maintained. However, in reality, the northern frontier would be the dominant force and take over the territories of two empires. More importantly, the 13th prince was now an important part of Black Flood Dragon's military force. No matter what Black Flood Dragon's original intentions were, he was now Black Flood Dragon's loyal subordinate. Therefore, when the time came, the new Northern Territory God system would be the one to spread across the Frost Mirror Prairie. The legend of the Prairie Wolf God would gradually be replaced or even cut off, and it would directly affect their clan. However, if they were to fight against the Northern Frontier? Let's not talk about whether they could defeat the Northern Frontier. Even if they could, so what? Those guys were still alive at that time. It was hard to guarantee that they would not follow the clues and find the secret place of the Grassland Wolf clan. At that time, just like what the Black Jiao said, the entire Grassland Wolf clan would be exterminated. No, Lord Dragon King, you promised. You promised that if the result of the bet was out and we lost, the Prairie Wolf tribe would disband the god system and join your northern region. The Blood Demonic Wolf clan was obviously flustered. However, its panic did not affect Lin Yuan at all. Lin Yuan just tilted his head slightly and said indifferently, "Yes, I did give you a chance. However, when you cheated and planned to bully the Dragon Elephant Demon King, the bet between us no longer existed. Now you only have two choices. You can either retreat before this king's army arrives at the Frost Mirror Grassland, or you can try and see if you are a match for the northern frontier. Black Jiao. The blood demonic wolf clan's voice was almost distorted as it roared. Do you really think we are made of mud? If you insist on starting a war, I think your subordinates in the northern region will definitely suffer heavy casualties. At that time, can you still resist the invasion of the heavenly demons? Can you still compete with the southern wilderness? Will those demonic beasts in the Hengduan Mountains also miss the chance to encroach on the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce? You'd better think it through. Boom. In response to the blood demonic wolf clan's words, Lin Yuan burst forth with a demonic chi as mighty as the Wei River. When this king was still a demonic beast in the spirit awakening realm, his opponent was the mountain-shaking ape clan. Later, when this king reached the wisdom realm, he faced the king crocodile of the Red Flame Swamp. The mountain-blocking city was destroyed by this king, and the 7 border cities of the Shenwu dynasty all fell into the hands of this king. After that, whether it was the Endless Sea, the Sky Demon, or even the Guardian of the Heaven Gate, which one of them made this king afraid? Lin Yuan sneered and glanced at the blood demonic wolf clan from the corner of his eyes. He said mockingly, "This king knows that you are not made of mud, but have you ever seen this king fight against those soft persimmons since he was born? In other words, if you were really made of mud, this king would not be interested in fighting against you." The blood demonic wolf clan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He roared, "If that's the case, then there's nothing to talk about. Today, this god must kill you, Black Jiao, who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Then let's fight." Lin Yuan grinned. With a thought, he unsealed the battlefield that was about to decide the outcome of the battle. The willow branch turned into a green light again and directly sealed the space where Lin Yuan and the blood demonic wolf clan were. This king then said with a hideous smile, previously, this king was still thinking that since the grassland wolf clan had already suppressed themselves to this extent, this king had no reason to fight against you. Chapter 1095. Had he been tricked by the Black Jiao again? The blood chi wolf demon's expression changed slightly. Suddenly, it was filled with endless anger. It suddenly realized what the Black Jiao's actions meant. Previously, they did not seal off the battlefield because they wanted to prove that the Prairie Wolf clan had tampered with the bet. They had invited the Dragon Elephant Demon King, who had been famous for a long time, to deal with a junior like the 13th Prince. After that, they sealed off the battlefield to prevent others from spying on them. They did not want the 13th Prince to be exposed to the world. Especially after the Heaven and Earth seal was lifted, the projection of the young man and the Dragon Elephant Demon King disappeared one after another. Almost at the end, Dariachi died and the projection of the Dragon King Demon King disappeared. On the other hand, the 13th Prince had already retracted his Dharma form. His body was riddled with injuries and it was obvious that he had been beaten into a sorry state. There was no sign of him being on par with Dariachi or even suppressing the Dragon Elephant Demon King. It was obvious that he had been dodging pathetically and had dragged on until Dariachi died before he finally won this round. And now, the Blood Chi Wolf Demon King. He actually took the initiative to declare war on the Black Jiao? Damn it. What a cunning Black Jiao. It wasn't a fool, so it naturally knew what these images meant to those spies. After all, the Tianwu continent was vast and boundless. Even if the various sea demon clans in the Endless Sea were not included, there were still many god systems. The Black Jiao's actions were only to appease the neighboring god systems and cover up the ferocious face of the northern frontier god system. He pushed all the blame to the Prairie Wolf clan. It was as if the Prairie Wolf clan was aggressive and wanted to declare war on the northern frontier. This Black Jiao, his ambition was too big. The Blood Chi Wolf Demon King reacted almost instantly. Its eyes were extremely gloomy. If the Black Jiao went to war with the Prairie Wolf tribe at all costs, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the neighboring god systems would be afraid. If the Black Jiao attacked the other god systems one day, the members of those god systems would gather together, which would cause a lot of trouble. Good, very good. Black Jiao, do you really think you have us under your thumb? The Blood Chi Wolf Demon's eyes flashed. It did not wait for Lin Yuan to make the first move. Its blood chi suddenly burst forth, and the terrifying power instantly destroyed the surrounding ground, flowers, and trees. Seeing the blood chi demon wolf attack, Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed. At this moment, he suddenly realized that although the blood chi demon wolf in front of him was not the blood chi demon wolf's real body, the blood chi demon wolf did not cultivate the evil Tao that he had imagined. Instead, it was a method that was very similar to how human experts entered the Tao through martial arts. It mainly relied on the power of its own chi and blood, which could be said to be the most masculine and masculine. The blood chi demon wolf's body was also not refined by the blood chi demon wolf's real body. It was separated from the blood chi demon wolf's real body. Based on this point alone, the threat level of the blood chi demon wolf's real body increased by several levels in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan also focused his mind. The black dragon tail behind him swung, and a large amount of demon power turned into the nether realm black water, which instantly formed the Dharma form of a black dragon. As soon as the Dharma form of the dragon was formed, it directly rushed toward the blood chi demon wolf. In a flash, the nether realm black water collided with the powerful blood chi. Just a moment of contact caused a terrifying explosion. However, the strange thing was that neither Lin Yuan nor the blood chi demon wolf heard any sound. Blood kept flowing out of their mouths and noses. Obviously, they were injured by the aftershock of the explosion. Louder silence. It was easy to imagine how terrifying the power of this collision was. Although the two of them looked equally miserable, the blood chi demon wolf was obviously at a disadvantage. This was because under the shock wave that swept over, even though it had used all its strength, it was still pushed back 5 steps before it could completely dissipate the force. On the other hand, Lin Yuan remained where he was, looking at it mockingly. Buzz. The blood chi demon wolf stretched its muscles and bones, and a crisp sound came from its body. At the same time, an even more powerful blood chi exploded. Burning essence blood and exploding with full power? Interesting. Lin Yuan looked at the increasingly powerful blood chi and then looked at the blood chi demon wolf that was gradually becoming wilted and shriveled. For a moment, he was actually a little absent-minded. As expected, the so-called genius and demon were just names that were blown out of proportion. However, those who had climbed to the top step by step could not be underestimated. The blood chi demon wolf was clearly an incarnation of the blood chi of a fake god of the wolf tribe on the grassland, but it was only slightly inferior to him in a head-on collision. If he was facing the real body of the blood chi demon wolf, he would not have had such an advantage. The increasingly powerful blood chi did not collide with Lin Yuan. Instead, it constantly revolved around the gradually weakened blood demon wolf. After about 4 or 5 breaths, the blood demon wolf suddenly looked up to the sky and howled. The blood chi that had spread out actually formed a Dharma form of the blood demon wolf that stood up in front of it. The Dharma form of the blood demon wolf was about 1,000 feet tall. Yes, burning essence blood and exploding with full power. The blood chi demon wolf smiled bitterly and squinted its eyes. Black Jiao, I only have the strength for one more blow. If you can survive this blow, then my real body will be waiting for you on the Frost Mirror grassland. As soon as it finished speaking, the Dharma form of the blood-red werewolf took a step forward and suddenly came in front of Lin Yuan. It was so fast that Lin Yuan did not even have time to react. He only saw the blood-red wolf claw hitting his abdomen. The sound of flesh being penetrated was heard. Lin Yuan's eyes widened slightly. Golden blood kept flowing from the corners of his mouth. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. When a snake grew up, it became a python. When a python grew up, it became a flood dragon, and the flood dragon became a dragon. Regardless of whether this statement is reliable or not, Lin Yuan is indeed an existence that evolved from a snake into a flood dragon. Although he can be said to be a different species from the snake, in fact, he still retains some snake characteristics, such as cold-bloodedness, fear of cold, and weakness. To beat a snake, one had to hit it 7 or 3 inches. The 3 inches was the most vulnerable part of a snake's bones, and the 7 inches was the heart. According to the species of snake, the 3 inches and 7 inches were located in different places. Generally speaking, The 3 inches and 7 inches were the 2 most important weaknesses of a snake. The Dharma form of the blood-red werewolf pierced through his scales, flesh, and grabbed his heart with just 1 blow. *CK. Lin Yuan cursed in his heart. The thing he was most worried about had happened. After all, he was only in the wild demon realm. When facing a real expert, although he could rely on the system and the power of incense to fight, if he encountered an existence that could kill him in a second, no matter how many tricks he had, he would not be able to use them. Chapter 1096. That's impossible. The blood demon wolf's expression changed abruptly. It was as if it was not Lin Yuan who had been pierced through, but it was itself. As powerful as Lin Yuan was, he could already enter the state of minute subtlety. Even without using his eyes, he could feel all the changes in his body, such as the flow of his blood, the squirming of his muscles. Therefore, he could feel that the Dharma form of the blood demon wolf had clenched hard, but its target was not his heart. In other words, although it had pierced through the blood demon wolf's heart and reached its claws, it had grabbed nothing. How could that be? Lin Yuan looked at the Dharma form of the blood demon wolf that was gradually fading away in front of him. A trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. After all, the blood demon wolf was an existence at the level of a false god. It could be said that it was a demon king at the peak level and could use the power of incense to fight. Even in the untainted world, it was not a weakling that could be killed easily. But why would an existence of this level make such a fatal mistake in battle? It had clearly grasped the vital point, but it missed when it was sure to hit the target? Lin Yuan opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of golden blood. His eyes were gloomy. The feeling of walking in front of the gates of hell was indeed not a good feeling. It wasn't that he was afraid of death. For someone like him who had been through a blood feud in his previous life, death wasn't something that was hard to accept. When the people he cared about him died one by one in front of him, he was already considered a dead man. The only thing he could not accept was that he had the power to take revenge, but he had fallen before he could do so. How could you not have a demon core? The blood demon wolf looked at Lin Yuan in disbelief. It muttered something, but it answered Lin Yuan's doubts. For existences who could use the power of incense, having their hearts crushed was indeed not a serious injury. Take Neza for example. Even Tai could use the lotus roots to create a new body for him. So, even if the body was completely destroyed, let alone 1 or 2 vital parts, as long as one was willing to consume enough incense, everything could be regathered. Therefore, although the blood chi wolf demon had pierced through Lin Yuan's heart, it did not choose to crush Lin Yuan's heart. Instead, it wanted to crush Lin Yuan's monster core and destroy his cultivation. After all, in the eyes of the blood demon wolf, Lin Yuan could use the power of incense, and he had killed 2 demon kings before. It never occurred to the blood demon wolf that Lin Yuan was just a demon beast of the wild demon realm. He could only use the power of incense with the help of the system, and he was far from reaching the threshold of a god. However, the problem of the blood chi demon wolf had indeed stumped Lin Yuan. Monster Core. When wild beasts absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to gain intelligence and become demon beasts, they would reach the spirit awakening realm. During the process from the spirit awakening realm to the wisdom realm, a demon beast's body would condense an energy ball made of demon power. This energy ball stored all the demon power, and at the same time, it acted as a node, similar to a human's Dantian sea of chi. It could be said that without a monster core, a demon beast could not cultivate. To a demon beast, a monster core was equivalent to a spiritual treasure. During a battle, a demon beast could even spit out its own monster core to injure the enemy. The stronger the demon beast's cultivation, the more powerful its monster core would be. But on the other hand, once the monster core was in the hands of others, it was equivalent to the demon beast's life being controlled by others. With just a thought, the demon beast could completely turn into a beast. In addition to these functions, a monster core was also a great supplement for human cultivators and other demon beasts. Some demon beasts with precious bloodlines could condense a monster core that did not contain any impurities. It could even be directly swallowed, allowing one to obtain at least 70% of the demon beast's cultivation when it was alive, as well as some other benefits. Monster cores were also an indispensable ingredient in the process of refining many extraordinary pills. The main purpose of the existence of the demon slayers was to hunt down the demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range, reducing the number of demon beasts in each tribe, and reducing the number of demon beasts that would be needed to face in the next beast tide. However, as time passed, the demon slayers had completely turned into hunters. Their main purpose was to hunt down various demon beasts and exchange their flesh, materials, and monster cores for money or resources. Previously, when Mountain Blocking City was still around, there were many demon slayers who coveted Lin Yuan's monster core. However, the problem was that Lin Yuan knew very well that he never had a monster core. Whether it was demon power or Joss flame power, they were all values on the system panel. Only when Lin Yuan needed them could he use the system's power to mobilize them. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that he had never faced this problem head-on before. Moreover, there seemed to be a mysterious force that constantly disturbed him, preventing him from thinking about this problem. Only at this moment, when the Blood Chi Wolf Demon's sneak attack failed, did Lin Yuan finally wake up from his daze. This seemed to be something that did not make sense, but everything was so logical. After all, Lin Yuan had cultivated to this stage, and it could be said that he had never seriously cultivated for a single day. His strength was completely built on constantly killing other living creatures, and obtaining attribute points through the system to strengthen himself. Until now, he seemed to have no idea what a proper cultivation method was. Putting aside the spiritual awakening and wisdom connection realms, Lin Yuan should have sensed that something was wrong when he reached the Mountain Lord realm. What was a Mountain Lord? To be more mysterious, demonic beasts that had reached the Mountain Lord realm and River Lord realm were already existences similar to mountain gods and river gods. Demonic beasts that had reached this realm would usually have their own territory. In this territory, demonic beasts of that realm would be greatly strengthened, and they would even be able to mobilize the power of the rules to a certain extent. Just like the three-eyed ape, who had paid the price of his life to temporarily enter the desolate demon realm. He had almost killed the Lu clan's patriarch with a single punch. As for Lin Yuan himself, although he had territories like the Stoneclaw Forest and the northern frontier, he had never been strengthened, nor had he had the opportunity to feel the power of the rules. He was completely a demonic beast whose physical fitness and demonic power had reached the standard of the Mountain Lord realm. He had none of the special techniques that every realm should have. And now, the desolate demon realm was the same. What was a desolate demon? When demonic beasts come out of the mountains, the world would become a wasteland. This was similar to the birth of the drought demon, a powerful force that could dry land for thousands of miles. However, Lin Yuan still had not grasped the power related to this. All along, he had relied on his powerful attributes to fight with his enemies. At this stage, he had even completely relied on the power of faith and did not display any of the abilities that a demonic beast of this realm should have. Chapter 1097. Lin Yuan's face was very ugly. He didn't care about the Blood Chi Wolf demon that was slowly dissipating, because the problem in front of him was too serious. Why didn't he have a demon core? Why was the way of promotion different from other demonic beasts? Was it because the system was playing tricks behind his back? Or was it because he was not a demonic beast, but a human wearing the skin of a demonic beast? Did he not have a demon core from the beginning? Or was his demon core in the hands of the system when it was condensed? He thought that he had gotten rid of the system's control and turned from a pawn to a collaborator. But he didn't expect that the clown was himself. Lin Yuan's eyes were gloomy, and he couldn't speak for a while. Ho, ho, ho. After a long time, the sealed world was gradually unsealed. Lin Yuan, whose wounds had already healed, took a deep breath and flew in the direction of Shunning City, as if nothing had happened. At the same time, far away in the untainted world, Hongjun, who was still wearing a snow-white robe, slowly opened his eyes. His eyes, which had always been calm and emotionless, suddenly flashed with surprise. He stretched out his right hand and quickly made a few gestures, but he didn't speak for a long time. He just frowned as if he was thinking about something. Teacher. The Western Buddhists, who were called by Hongjun, cupped their hands at the same time. Although they were smiling on the surface, they were inexplicably flustered in their hearts. After Hongjun merged with the Way of Heaven, he had been in charge of the untainted world for countless years. The creatures of the untainted world under his command had conquered thousands of worlds. He had destroyed and annexed many large, medium, and small worlds. Many things had happened in these countless years, and even the untainted world had suffered more than one defeat in the battlefield of thousands of worlds. But there had never been a time when Hongjun showed joy or anger on his face. The last time Hongjun showed a strange expression, it was because there was a revelation in the untainted world. Any existence above the golden immortal could sense that the death tribulation of the Tao ancestor had appeared. It was just that no one was sure when this dictator would face the tribulation. This was the second time. The Tao ancestor actually frowned, as if he was thinking about something difficult to understand. As the Western sect that had also existed for countless years and created a huge Western sect, the two Western Buddhists, who had conflicts with Sanqing more than once, were naturally not stupid and slow-witted. When they thought of how the Tao ancestors suddenly called the two of them over and revealed such an expression, they probably did not know how big of a pit was waiting for them ahead. I asked the two of you to choose a capable disciple to go to that small world. Now, do you have anyone in mind? The expression on Hongjuan's face eased slightly, and he once again returned to his emotionless appearance. It was as if he wasn't the one who was frowning and pondering. His voice was as calm as ever, without the slightest emotion. Jie-in was silent for a moment and said in a deep voice, "Now that the cultivation tribulation is coming, the Shenmen sect and the Buddhism sect are preparing for war. They really can't choose a suitable candidate for the Tao ancestors' request, so they can only take a step back. I have already sent Qin Chi and Zheng Luan to set off. On this trip, they will definitely take the head of the Black Jiao for the Tao ancestor." Taoist Zhuan Ti also took the opportunity to continue the conversation and said, "Although Qin Chi and Zheng Luan are serving the heavenly court, they have guarded the mountain gate for the Buddhism sect for many years. They have done their best to preach and guard the Dharma treasures. This time, they should have this opportunity to serve the Tao ancestor." At this point, Taoist Zhuan Ti's expression was a little awkward. He added, "However, although these two generals have great magical powers, they might not be able to take down the Black Jiao. Therefore, on this trip, these two generals are only attracting the attention of the Black Jiao and those traders. I have already ordered people to go to the Ren school to invite the Mosquito Daoren under the Grand Supreme Senior Brother. With the help of the Mosquito Daoren, a mere Black Jiao will naturally be easy to capture." When it came to the Mosquito Daoren, the Western Buddhism sect's expression was a little awkward. The Mosquito Daoren was also a great demon that had only emerged during the God Investiture tribulation. His methods were very strange. When he first appeared in the world, he ate the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit of the Jie school into an empty shell. Then, he went to the Western Paradise and swallowed 3 of the 12 grade lotus seats of the Taoist, causing Buddhism to appear 1,000 years later. After that, although the Western Buddhism sect had taken down the Mosquito Daoren, they were rescued by an unknown powerful cultivator. Other than knowing that the Mosquito Daoren was a ferocious beast, the blood-winged black mosquito, they had gained nothing. Overall, they had suffered a great loss. Even many years later, the Western Buddhism sect only knew that the Mosquito Daoren was a disciple of the Taishang sect. The one who had rescued the Mosquito Daoren was also one of the incarnations of the Taishang sect. However, he had cast a spell to disguise himself. The two of them did not recognize him. In addition, they had no evidence at hand, so they could only suffer the consequences of their own actions. The main reason why they were sure that the Mosquito Daoren was a disciple of the Taishang sect was that the 12 grade lotus seats were destroyed, causing Buddhism to appear 1,000 years later. However, the Taishang sect had transformed into Li'er to establish Taoism during this period of time. He even left the legend of the 3,000 miles of purple qi and the Tao Te Ching, which was known as the ultimate treasure of postnatal merit. No one knew where he went after that, but anyone with a bit of brain could figure it out. After Laozi left the Hangu Pass, no one knew where he went. However, he suddenly transformed into a Buddha and transformed into Shakyamuni to enlighten the Western region and India. A series of legends were also recognized by later generations of Buddhism to a large extent, treating Laozi as the original Buddha. In a sense, before the journey to the West began, the Western Buddhism sect and the Shenmen sect had not officially started the war. However, the Taishang sect had already given the Western Buddhism sect a fierce blow. Even if Buddhism later flourished, the Taishang sect still had to respect the Taishang sect as the original Buddha. And the start of all these combined blows was none other than the destruction of the 12 great lotus seats by the mosquito Daoren in the Western Nirvana. In other words, the Taishang sect had almost single-handedly suppressed the Western Buddhism sect and gave them a vicious beating. As a chess piece in the Taishang sect's plan, mosquito Daoren had played a trick on the Western Buddhism sect. If the Taishang sect had not followed up with a series of operations, they would not have even thought that mosquito Daoren was a disciple of the Taishang sect. However, this also proved the strength of mosquito Daoren. With the two generals Hang and Ha attracting the attention of everyone, and mosquito Daoren secretly waiting for an opportunity to assassinate, if they could not take down the Black Jiao, then even if the Western Buddhism sect sent out their own incarnations, the Black Jiao would still be able to escape unscathed. Good. Hongjun replied indifferently. There was still no joy or sorrow on his face. Even the Western Buddhism sect, who had thought about this for countless years with Hongjun, could not tell at this moment whether Hongjun agreed or disagreed. They could not even guess what Hongjun thought the success rate of such a lineup going to the Tianwu world. Chapter 1098. Lin Yuan, who had returned to the prince's mansion in the northern frontier, paused for a moment and turned his eyes to the main hall. A young man in a blood-red robe was sitting on the main seat, leisurely sipping a cup of tea. Many servants were busy cleaning and other miscellaneous things around him. The guards of the prince's mansion were also patrolling and guarding. However, no one looked at the young man in the blood-red robe. It was as if no one had seen him at all. However, Lin Yuan only glanced at him and felt a chill crawling up his back. There was no way to describe that kind of chill because his whole body was numb. Even Lin Yuan's posture of staring at the young man in the red robe froze, as if he had turned into a statue. "Nice to meet you, Lin Yuan." The young man in the red robe narrowed his eyes slightly and put down the teacup in his hand. He smiled and said, "I am the virtuous corpse doppelganger of sect leader Tong'an. You can call me Shangqing Heavenly Lord, or you can call me by my title." Hearing the young man in the red robe call himself, Lin Yuan only felt his scalp tingle. According to the myths and records in his previous life, sect leader Tong Tian disappeared after the investiture of gods. However, as the winner, the Grand Supreme, had an incarnation in the heavenly court. As the loser, sect leader Tong Tian naturally had an incarnation in the heavenly court, and it was Shangqing Heavenly Lord Lingbao. However, there were not many records about Shangqing Heavenly Lord Lingbao, but from the few records that there were, it could be seen that the Jade Emperor Zhang Bairen, who was supported by the Grand Supreme, respected Shangqing Heavenly Lord Lingbao very much, even as much as the Grand Supreme. After all, the investiture of gods was not an ordinary thing. Even if a sage died in the tribulation, his name would be on the list. It was just that the restriction on the sage was not as strong as that on ordinary immortals. The young man in the red robe, who called himself Shangqing Heavenly Lord, was undoubtedly one of the three incarnations of sect leader Tong Tian. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he said in a deep voice, "Sect leader Tong, your name is like thunder in my ears. It's my honor to have you visit my humble abode." Shangqing Heavenly Lord squinted his eyes and sized up Lin Yuan. Suddenly, he laughed and said, "I have always believed in education without discrimination. If you were born in the untainted land, you would be the one who carried the tripod of the Order of Jia. But it's fine now. You are not ambitious, but you are born with pride. You will never submit to others and will do anything to achieve your goal. If you enter the Order of Jia, no matter you or I, we will not be at ease." When he spoke up to hear, There seemed to be a look of regret in his eyes, but it was only for an instant, and he quickly said seriously, "I didn't come here to demonstrate my strength to you or anything else. I just came to give you a reminder. In a few days, there will probably be experts from the primeval world descending here. I don't need to explain their purpose to you, right?" Lin Yuan thought for a moment and his face darkened. He said, "Thank you for your reminder, Senior." Qin Qi, Jinglun of the Western Order. Well, just these two names may be hard for you to understand. But if I were to say the two generals Hang and Ha, you should know who they are, right? This time, the two generals Hang and Ha will attract your attention from the front, but the one in the dark is the one who will kill you. You have to be careful. Even the Western Order has suffered losses from him. Ha, I'm going. Shangqing Heavenly Lord laughed and his body burst like a bubble, dissipating into nothingness. Only Lin Yuan was left standing in the same place with a solemn face. For a moment, hundreds of thoughts were running through his mind. The Western Order was notorious in Lin Yuan's eyes. What these two guys did in the untainted land was enough to be called the most shameless. Usually, they were the ones who suffered losses from others. Suddenly, Lin Yuan guessed who they had suffered losses from, but Lin Yuan had no clue at all. Shangqing Heavenly Lord obviously came with bad intentions. He came here to tell Lin Yuan that an expert from the untainted land would come to the Tianwu world to kill him in the near future. He even pointed out that the two generals Hang and Ha were just a cover on the surface. The real killer was someone else in the dark, but he didn't tell Lin Yuan the real identity of the killer. At that time, Lin Yuan would be apprehensive about the killer in the dark. Maybe he would be killed by the two generals Hang and Ha before the other party could make a move. Although the two generals Hang and Ha appeared as funny figures in most myths and legends, even during the time of King Wu's conquest of the Zhou dynasty, the two of them belonged to different camps. Their mounts, appearances, secret techniques, and martial arts were almost the same. They were in a deadlock and both of them used the soul-sucking secret technique. In the end, both of them fell from their horses at the same time and were rescued by their subordinates. Even those who were watching the battle were amused. But back to the main topic, the two generals Hang and Ha were definitely the strongest in the untainted land. Take Taoist Red Cloud and Demon Master Kun Peng as an example. Because Taoist Red Cloud beat Kun Peng at his own game, Demon Master Kun Peng also lost his sage position. After that, he wanted to kill Taoist Red Cloud, but he only destroyed Taoist Red Cloud's physical body. Although he had the protection of the 99 Red Cloud's soul-scattering gourd, it could be seen that most of the creatures in the untainted land only destroyed the physical body and couldn't hurt the primordial spirit. However, if the primordial spirit wasn't destroyed, it could be reincarnated. But the two generals Hang and Ha, who were the mountain guardians of the Western sect, used the soul-sucking secret technique. They were definitely not ordinary people when they attacked. After all, the two generals of the Western sect had done many shameless things. No one knew how many people they had cheated to join the Western sect. Other than that, they had also cheated countless treasures to fill the Western sect's storehouse. The fact that the two generals Hang and Ha could be conferred as the mountain guardians of the Western sect after their death and were responsible for guarding the treasures proved their terrifying strength. Taking a step back, an existence who could make the two generals Hang and Ha cover for him while he hid in the dark and waited for an opportunity to kill was probably more difficult to deal with than the two generals Hang and Ha. Either this guy was extremely good at assassination and instant killing, or his strength was above that of the two generals Hang and Ha. It seemed that the last time Hongjuan's projection descended, he was attacked by the system and the will of the world. He had suffered a lot, but he also saw the drawbacks of this protection. If the attacker's strength was similar to that of Lin Yuan, then neither the system nor the will of the world would attack. Only the sudden attack of an existence like Hongjun, whose strength was far above that of Lin Yuan, could make the two bosses activate and fight. However, he would deal with whatever came his way. Since the untainted land had attacked, there was naturally no reason for him to sit and wait for death. Lin Yuan thought for a moment. Then he rose again and flew in the direction of the endless sea. Although he was the emperor of the underworld in the Tianwu world, after all, he had not formed the underworld. He was not familiar with the secret techniques that targeted the soul. Instead of directly fighting the two generals Hang and Ha, it was better to find someone to borrow a treasure to fight. Of course, it would be better if he could ask that person to attack directly. Anyway, in the untainted land, borrowing treasures to fight the enemy or asking for help could be said to be basic. He just did not know how much he would have to pay this time to satisfy that person's appetite. Chapter 1099. After leaving the prince's mansion in the northern frontier, Shangqing Heavenly Lord's face suddenly darkened. Of course, he knew who was responsible for the assassination of Lin Yuan. Strictly speaking, there was still a deep hatred between him and the assassin. During the investiture of God's tribulation, the old man who received the guide subdued the saintess of Turtle Spirit and wanted to persuade her to join the Western religious sect. However, the saintess of Turtle Spirit was one of the 4 disciples of Tong Tian. Although she was impatient and impulsive, she was straightforward and was favored by Tong Tian. She could be considered loyal to the Jie sect and was completely different from the traitor Ding Guangxian. After all, when Guang Qingzi visited the Aquamarine Palace 3 times and intended to stir up a dispute, his impatient disciple did not restrain herself and attacked. Not only was she defeated by the flipping sky seal and was beaten out of her original form, she also implicated a group of fellow disciples. It could be said that a large part of the reason why the Jie sect faced the tribulation was because of the impulsiveness of the saintess of Turtle Spirit. Therefore, Tongtan, who was furious, expelled the saintess of Turtle Spirit from the palace and did not allow her to enter the palace to listen to lectures. However, in the 2 battles of the Immortal Slaying Formation and the Myriad Immortal Formation, the saintess of Turtle Spirit still followed Tong Tian without hesitation. In the end, she was defeated by Zhu Lu Sun in the Myriad Immortal Formation. When she chased to the west, she met the shameless old man who received the guide who bullied the weak. Finally, she was killed by Mosquito Daoren and became an empty shell. Although he was annoyed by the impulsiveness of the saintess of Turtle Spirit, Tong Tian still felt guilty for this disciple. Mosquito Daoren, Shangqing Heavenly Lord's eyes flashed with anger as he gently chewed on the name. He murmured, "You must not die in the hands of the Black Jiao so easily. I still have a score to settle with you." At the same time, in the untainted world, above the heavenly court, outside the 33rd heaven, a young man in a blood-red robe and black shirt knelt outside the Tushida Palace with a solemn expression. The young man looked to be at most 26 or 27 years old. His skin was fair, his face was like jade, and his facial features could be considered exquisite. However, he had an extremely long nose, which made his facial features look extremely out of place, greatly destroying the first impression he gave others. He was not famous in the untainted land, but his achievements were amazing. Back then, the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit defeated several golden immortals of Kunlun in the 10,000 Immortals formation. Even the 12 golden immortals of the Chan sect, Zhu Lu Sun, was defeated by him and was chased by the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit all the way to the west. Although it was Jie-in who suppressed the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit still died in his hands. Don't think that it was easy to kill the suppressed Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit. It should be known that the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit was originally a 10,000-year-old spirit turtle. She inherited the word Songjie created, and when the turtle script had the shape of wings, she turned into a human form. She could be said to be a powerful figure in the period of the Yan Emperor. She also inherited a part of the merit and luck. After killing the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, he went to the Western Paradise under the order of his teacher and bit the 12-grade lotus seat of Jie-in, causing it to become a 9-grade lotus seat. This directly caused the prosperity of Buddhism to be delayed by 1,000 years, giving his teacher the opportunity and time to transform into a Buddha. After that, he followed his teacher's order and had been cultivating in seclusion, never leaving his own cave. That was why there were few Mosquito Daoren in the world. However, he had never expected that the old bastard would be so shameless. In order to take revenge, he actually recommended him to Hongjun and asked him to go to the small Kiliacosm to assassinate the Black Jiao. He even did not hesitate to push out the 2 mountain gods of Shi sect to help him and cut off his retreat. It could be said that it was an opportunity for Generals Heng and Ha to go to the small Kiliacosm to kill the Black Jiao. Although Generals Heng and Ha belonged to two camps during the period of King Wu's attack, they were under the jurisdiction of the Western sect after they became gods. They had always been in charge of guarding the Western sect and had never offended any mighty figures or people with deep foundations. As long as they were not killed by the Black Jiao on this trip, if the matter failed, they could blame it on him for the assassination. If the matter succeeded, they would naturally have a share of the credit. On the other hand, although his teacher was still a heavenly sage in the untainted world, it was true that Sanqing joined hands to plot against Hongjun. Although Tong Tian had left the untainted world for many years, he was still in contact with his teacher and Uncle Master Yuanshi. Therefore, Mosquito Daoren naturally knew that the good corpse clone of Tongtan, Lord Shangqing, was in that small Kiliacosm at the moment. This also meant that it was an opportunity for others to do this task. No matter whether they succeeded or failed, they would be rewarded by the Tao ancestor. However, if he went to that small Kiliacosm, once he fell into the hands of Lord Shangqing, he would really be unable to live or die. In the entire untainted world, there was really no one who was more protective than Tong Tian. Although Sanqing was acting in the war between the three sects, Tong Tian's intention to stand up for his disciple could not be faked at all. Although the matter between the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit and Guangqingzi had caused the entire Jie sect to be tainted with the aura of calamity, the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit was loyal to Tong Tian. Even the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit was suppressed by Taoist Jieyin because Tong Tian shouted in the 10,000 Immortals formation, "Quickly bring me Zhu Lu Sun." Even when facing a mighty figure like Taoist Jieyin, who was on the same level as Grandmaster Tong Tian, the goddess of Turtle Spirit did not retreat at all. She loyally carried out Grandmaster Tongtian's orders, which led to the disaster later. According to his understanding of Tong Tian, if he fell into his hands, even his teacher could not get him back. Therefore, Mosquito Daoren's only purpose in coming to the Tushita Palace was to ask his teacher to protect him on account of his loyalty to his teacher, so that he would not go to that small Kiliacosm where there was no chance of survival. However, what made him despair was that he had been kneeling outside the Tushita Palace for 12 hours. Corresponding to the time in the mortal world, he could be said to have been kneeling here for a year, but his teacher had no intention of showing up. The gate of the Tushita Palace was tightly shut, and he could not even see a Taoist child. It was clear that he had acquiesced in this matter. Mosquito Daoren lamented in his heart. Suddenly, he kowtowed twice and said in a sorrowful voice, "I know that teacher is in a difficult position. Since teacher is unwilling to show up, I will not force you. After this farewell, I don't know if I will still have the fate to serve teacher. I only hope that teacher can fulfill his wish as soon as possible. I will leave now." After Mosquito Daoren finished kowtowing and stood up, he turned into a blood-winged black mosquito and flew into the sky. Only then did a faint sigh come from the Tushita Palace. Karma is the most difficult thing in the world to return. The cause of the past is the effect of today. So what if you can avoid this calamity? It is the end of the calamity. A calm voice rang out. It seemed to have penetrated time and space and directly exploded in Mosquito Daoren's mind. Chapter 1100. Returning to the timeline of the Tianwu world. It had been 3 months since he met the Shangqing Skylord. In these 3 months, Lin Yuan had been paying attention to the movements of the Gate of Heaven. However, the strange thing was that other than the cultivators and demonic beasts guarding the Gate of Heaven, Lin Yuan's Eye of God could not see anything strange at all. Not to mention the experts from the Eldritch world, even the Sky Demon, who had been continuously entering the Tianwu world, could not be seen. This did not make sense and was impossible. It was still unknown whether the 2 fox demons had entered the Tianwu world through the Gate of Heaven. However, they were backed by the Patriarch Yang Mei, who had attained the Great Tao of Space. He was a fierce man who could fight head-on with Hongjun, who had merged with the Heavenly Tao. If such an existence wanted to open a crack in space and send in 2 demonic king-level fox demons, it would be extremely easy. However, other than the Patriarch Yang Mei, There were not many existences in the Eldritch world who could play with space to perfection. Especially now that the patriarch Yang Mei was in the sea of bitterness outside the gate of heaven, who would dare to play with space in front of the patriarch Yang Mei and send in Generals Heng, Ha, and the unknown assassin? Whether it was Generals Heng, Ha, or the assassin, if they wanted to enter the Tianwu world, the only way was through the gate of heaven. To put it bluntly, if they had obediently entered the heaven martial world through the gate of heaven, it would have been fine. Although old ancestor Yang Mei and Hong Jun were not on good terms, he would still give Hong Jun some face. He would not have killed a few juniors. However, if they thought the patriarch Yang Mei was a fool and wanted to enter the Tianwu world through the gate of heaven, then sorry, the patriarch Yang Mei did not even need to do anything. He just needed to casually tamper with the space, and Generals Heng, Ha, and the assassin would not even know how they died. However, it had already been 3 months. There was no movement at all. It couldn't be that the Shangqing Heavenly Lord was so bored that he was making fun of him, right? However, regardless of whether Generals Heng, Ha, and the assassin would come or not, today was an important day. The youths who had been gathered by Lin Yuan to impart the Sutra of all living beings and then sent to the various worlds for training would return today. Although he could sense the actions of these youths through the universal scripture, Lin Yuan had never done so, nor did he give them any mission objectives. He only borrowed the power of the system to send them to the myriad worlds to train for 3 months, and when the time was up, he would bring them back through the system. As for how many of them he would be able to return, it was still unknown. The myriad worlds were not some blessed enclave. Lin Yuan wasn't the master god of the infinite style, nor was he the director of an orphanage. He couldn't decide which world these youths would go to, nor could he give them any cheat. The only thing he could give them was a cultivation method of the all-being scripture that suited them. However, with a suitable cultivation method, after going to the myriad worlds, it didn't mean that they would definitely become cultivators. The myriad worlds was just a general term. Other than the Tianwu world and the chaotic world, there was also the world of his previous life that had already entered the age of Dharma's end. There wasn't the slightest bit of spiritual chi between heaven and earth, and there were also worlds that were completely unsuitable for life forms to live in. To put it bluntly, many of these youths who were sent to the myriad worlds were unlucky, and died as soon as they arrived in other worlds. There were also some who wasted 3 whole months without any progress in their cultivation, and were instead assimilated by the age of Dharma's end, causing their aptitude to be damaged. A milky white screen of light unfolded in front of him. One by one, the youths who seemed familiar stepped out of it. After the screen of light dissipated, Lin Yuan confirmed that out of the 217 youths, only 140 had returned safely. Of these 140 youths, another 30 had been affected by the age of Dharma's end. Originally, they could be considered to have excellent aptitude, but now, they could only be described as mediocre. However, other than these unlucky youths, there were also a few youths who made Lin Yuan's eyes light up. One of them was dressed like a Taoist, but from his cloth to his Taoist robe, everything was pitch black. Lin Yuan couldn't sense the aura of a living person from his body, but the netherworld energy in his body was very close to him. It was very clear that this youth had obtained some ghost Tao inheritance. If he didn't die unexpectedly, once the world was repaired, he would become the Tianwu world's first batch of underworld gods. One of them was dressed in gray monk robes. His face still had a bit of childishness, but it was completely different from the white and clean appearance in Lin Yuan's memories. Now, his skin was a healthy bronze color. Even from a distance, Lin Yuan could feel the powerful qi and blood on his body. It was clear that he had entered a high cultivation world and obtained some Buddhist inheritance, cultivating some Vajra unbreakable cultivation method. There was also a youth who was dressed similarly to when he had left, but his aura had clearly changed. Furthermore, his body was filled with a faint medicinal fragrance. On his back was a small bag with a golden pill furnace. It seemed that he had obtained some kind of pill Tao inheritance. Just like how the all-life scripture would present different contents to different individuals, even the all-life scripture that had been recorded down would change according to the cultivator. Once this mystical cultivation technique was cultivated, It would constantly adjust itself, changing its contents according to the growth of the host. It would never be outdated no matter what time it was. Lin Yuan's gaze swept across these 140 youths and he said in a deep voice, "Although I don't know what you have experienced during this period of time, the fact that you are able to come back alive means that this period of training has been successful. Next, you will have about a month's holiday. You can do whatever you want to do. After a month, gather here again, and I will start the second training for you. I hope that next time, I will still be able to see each and every one of you." At this point, he turned his gaze to Kagura, who was waiting at the side, and said indifferently, "Choose a substitute from the reserve force to receive my inheritance. Replenish the 217 people. After a month, we will set off together with them." Kagura lowered her head slightly and responded in a deep voice. However, Lin Yuan slowly turned his head and cast his gaze in the direction of the divine gate. He smiled coldly and said, "You're finally here. I thought that person was really using me to make fun of me." At this point, he turned his head to look at the youths who had returned and changed the topic. "Coming at the right time is better than coming at the right time. All of you follow me. I will let you see how the realm that you will at least reach in the future fights." Chapter 1101. On the other side, Generals Heng and Ha, who had just arrived in the martial heaven realm, had gloomy expressions. They looked at the Heaven Gate guardians around them and were at a loss. The two sides were in a strange stalemate. After all, even though they knew beforehand that this was a minor world, they'd never imagined that the environment here would be so bad. The spirit energy of the heavens and the earth was already scarce to a certain extent. They didn't even doubt that if they were to cultivate in this world for half a year, their cultivations would probably regress instead of advancing. Moreover, why were the cultivators of this world so strange? Generals Heng and Ha had also suppressed their cultivation to the limits of the Tianwu world. The surrounding monsters and cultivators were more or less at the same level, but if they really fought, they would be able to easily kill most of them without using a soul-sucking secret technique. But the problem was, they were panicking. The universe was a boundless battlefield. Starting from the Middle Thousand Realms, countless experts went on expeditions to other realms. The various realms and the Bitter Sea were all battlefields. However, the carrying capacity of a minor dimension was limited. The resources were also limited. Therefore, they weren't disturbed. Even if someone found a minor dimension, they would only leave a coordinate and let it grow. After all, a fruit that wasn't ripe wasn't delicious. But this minor dimension, it obviously didn't participate in the war of the universe, but it was hostile to cultivators from other realms. This was something that they didn't expect before coming here. A minor dimension resisting cultivators from other realms? What a joke! Even in the cruel 10,000 realm battlefield, the flames of war wouldn't be brought to a minor dimension. If powerful beings from other realms went to a minor dimension, they would bring a lot of knowledge, technology, cultivation methods, seeds, precious beast bloodlines, and so on. For the powerful life forms from other worlds, the small Kiliacosm couldn't wait to welcome them. How could it be like now? They didn't even say a word, and directly surrounded him with covetous eyes, as if they wanted to start a fight immediately. But even if they didn't agree, they should at least say something. The two of them were natives of the great desolate realm. Even if they could imitate and translate languages, they still needed the other party to speak first before they could use it. The atmosphere was getting heavier and heavier. At this time, a muffled voice was heard. It was like a thunderclap in a clear sky. Everyone was startled and shivered. "Seniors, please take a rest. These two are here to cause trouble for me. I'll take care of them." Lin Yuan's voice came from the void. He stared at Generals Heng and Ha with his heterochromatic eyes. He slowly switched from the common language of the Tianwu world to the ancient Chinese of his previous world, which he had not used for a long time. He said, "I didn't expect that I would be able to alarm Generals Qin Chi and Zheng Lun to come together. Can I have a word with you?" Ha! Generals Heng and Ha didn't know how Lin Yuan knew their names and origins, but when they saw their target swaggering in front of them, their bodies reacted faster than their minds. They used the soul-sucking mystic skill almost at the same time. Obviously, they planned to destroy Lin Yuan's soul the moment he appeared. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly. When he saw the yellow and white qi coming towards him, he didn't look surprised at all. He just shook his head slightly. A red light appeared out of nowhere and turned into a red gourd. The moment it appeared, it grew with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it became a huge gourd more than 100 feet wide. Then, endless red sand flew out of the gourd and collided with the yellow and white qi. When Generals Heng and Ha saw the red gourd, their expressions changed and they panicked. They were existences that were adept at attacking the soul to begin with, so they naturally wouldn't fail to recognize this infamous Khanate spirit treasure. When the untainted world was created, there was a primordial spiritual root gourd vine at the foot of Mount Buzhou. There were 7 primordial spiritual treasures: red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. These 7 primordial spiritual treasures were refined into several famous treasures. They were Taoist Red Cloud's soul-dispersing gourd, Taoist Lu Ya's immortal-killing flying dagger, Goddess Nuo's demon-summoning gourd, and Laozi's purple gold gourd. The other 3 gourds were not famous, but they were obtained by sect leader Tong Tian, Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, and Taoist Hongjun respectively. Moreover, the primordial spiritual root gourd vine was used to create humans by Goddess Nuo. In the end, it turned into a treasure of merit. The 7 gourds it produced naturally shared some of the merit power, making them more powerful. Although Goddess Nuo was a great saint of the demon clan, she was also the holy mother of the human clan. The reason why she could command all the demons in the world was mainly because of the demon-summoning gourd in her hand. As for Taoist Lu Ya's immortal-killing flying dagger, it was even more outrageous. When he said, "Treasure, please turn around," it could be said that except for a few people, all the others who were targeted by Lu Ya were doomed to die. However, among the 7 gourds, the most vicious one was Taoist Red Cloud's soul-dispersing gourd. Without injecting magic power into it, this red gourd looked only 3 feet and 3 inches in size, but it contained an endless amount of soul-dispersing red sand. Once the soul-dispersing gourd was used, the red sand would cover the sky and earth. Anyone who touched it would be destroyed in body and soul under the golden immortal of the great all-embracing heaven. They would not even be able to enter the reincarnation cycle. What surprised Generals Heng and Ha the most was that they recognized this treasure. After all, Taoist Red Cloud's physical body had been destroyed by the demon master Kunpeng. Even if he could refine it again after countless years, his skills would definitely be reduced to less than 10%. This soul-dispersing gourd could be said to be Taoist Red Cloud's lifeblood. Without the protection of this treasure, Taoist Red Cloud would definitely be doomed if he was targeted by a powerful enemy. How did this Black Jiao get this soul-dispersing gourd? Did he borrow it? Or was Taoist Red Cloud dead? Generals Heng and Ha continued to use the soul-absorbing mystic technique, blasting out yellow and white qi to fight against the soul-dispersing red sand. They had no intention of retreating. However, this is also normal. After all, they are all big shots who have been famous for many years, and they are good at hurting people's souls. If the one who used the 99 soul-scattering gourd here was Red Cloud, they might be a little afraid. However, if the opponent was Lin Yuan, they would never admit defeat so easily. More importantly, Lin Yuan squinted his eyes slightly and opened his Eye of God, paying attention to every movement around him. He did not dare to be careless. After all, the mysterious assassin had not shown up yet. Now that he had used the soul-dispersing gourd to fight with Generals Heng and Ha, it would be difficult to find a more suitable opportunity to assassinate him. If the assassin was here, he would definitely not miss this opportunity. Chapter 1102. Generals Heng and Ha looked at each other and continued to use the soul-sucking secret technique, but their eyes were more serious than before. After all, they came from the great thousand worlds of the primitive era. Suddenly coming to a small thousand world with such a lack of spiritual qi, they were not used to it. The difference in the density of spiritual qi between the two worlds was so great that it even affected their strength to a certain extent. The efficiency of their spiritual qi recovery was so low that it made their hair stand on end. How great was the gap between them? For example, if the least talented human in the Tianwu world were to come to the primitive era, they would be able to step onto the path of cultivation with just a few breaths. The most annoying thing was that Generals Heng and Ha did not dare to wantonly absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in this small thousand world. Even if their cultivation method could convert all the spiritual qi of heaven and earth into spiritual qi, there was a huge difference between converting immortal qi and converting air. If they were to freely absorb the spiritual qi of Tianwu world, it was hard to say whether they could quickly recover their spiritual qi, but it was certain that it would not be long before the spiritual qi that they had painstakingly cultivated would be contaminated by the inferior spiritual qi. In the worst-case scenario, it could even harm their foundation. In the worst-case scenario, it would cost them thousands of years of cultivation. But Black Jiao was different. This Black Jiao had grown up in such a small thousand world. The quality of his spiritual qi was inferior, but it did not need to be that high to use spiritual qi to fight against enemies. After all, spiritual qi could strengthen spiritual qi to a certain extent, but spiritual qi always had a basic lower limit. The Khanate gourd was nurtured by the Khanate gourd vine, and it had been nurtured by an expert like Taoist Red Cloud for countless years. Even if its lower limit was low, how low could it be? Most importantly, the ninefold soul scatter gourd was a precious treasure that targeted the soul as well, and it was on par with their soul assimilation secret techniques in essence. If it was only the two of them fighting the Black WM, then they would sooner or later be completely exhausted of their energy and be at the mercy of the Black WM. Fortunately, in 2 breaths of time, Lin Yuan suddenly felt a gust of wind coming from behind him. Almost without thinking, he swung his flood dragon body and moved nearly 1,000 meters forward. Only now did Generals Heng and Ha's expressions gradually stiffen. Although they didn't manage to get the upper hand against the Black Jiao in the beginning, they were only here to provide cover. There was no need for them to fight to the death with the Black Jiao. As long as they could keep the Black Jiao here and ensure that the Black Jiao's attention was focused on them, their mission would be considered complete. Whether they could kill the Black Jiao or not depended on the mysterious mosquito Daoran. But the question was, why was it like this? Why did Black Jiao seem to have known about mosquito Doran's existence and avoided it in advance? And during this process, Black Jiao didn't relax his control of the 99 soul-dissipating gourd at all. Even though he was multitasking, he was still able to suppress the 2 brothers. This undoubtedly showed that Black Jiao wasn't serious at all. Fellow Taoist mosquito, the 99 soul-dissipating gourd is a primordial spiritual treasure with the power of merit. Even if the Black Jiao is extraordinarily talented, he can't control the magic treasure and use divine sense at the same time. We'll hold him back. You can go all out to show off your power. Chen Qi's eyes flashed coldly. He raised his hands, took out the demon-slaying pestle that had accompanied him for many years, and smashed it fiercely at the 99 soul-dissipating gourd in midair. After all, Jinglin was one of the generals Heng and Ha. Although they belonged to different camps at the beginning, they were both worshipped as the mountain guardians of the Western sect after they became gods. In addition, their divine sense and cultivation methods were similar. Over the years, they lived and ate together, and their relationship was even deeper than that of blood-related brothers. Even if they didn't communicate when they fought together, they were in a state of tacit understanding. Therefore, the moment Chen Qi spoke, Zhenglun had already begun to increase the output of his Dharma power. The white smoke coming out of his nose became thicker and thicker. He was going to fight the primordial spiritual treasure, the 99 soul-dissipating gourd, by himself. The Western sect has always been shameless. It's normal for the 3 of you to fight against one. Lin Yuan sneered while dodging the danger that could not be seen with the naked eye, but he could feel the danger. In the untainted land, there were many cultivators who put their cultivation on magic treasures. Even many powerful figures did so. Most of them had acquired spiritual treasures or even self-refined magic treasures. But the 99 soul-dissipating gourd was different. First, it was a primordial spiritual treasure stained with the power of merits. If Lin Yuan wanted to control it freely, He had to constantly pour in a large amount of demonic power to control it. Under such circumstances, Lin Yuan had to consider whether his demonic power was sufficient when he wanted to use some divine sense and magic arts, let alone control many magic treasures. After all, he was not so extravagant as to waste the power of incense here. Second, the 99 soul-dissipating gourd was originally Taoist Red Cloud's treasure. As mentioned before, most treasures had inhibition formations. The more inhibition formations were refined, the more power could be exerted. However, the 99 soul-dissipating gourd was borrowed. Lin Yuan couldn't refine all the inhibition formations on it, could he? Even if he could do it, Taoist Red Cloud would not agree to it. After all, refining all the seals was equivalent to erasing Taoist Red Cloud's ownership of the Khanate spiritual treasure. Therefore, even at his limit, he could only refine 40% of the seals at most. What was more, Lin Yuan couldn't do that. How could he refine a primordial spiritual treasure in 3 months? Did Taoist Red Cloud really think he was on the same level as Hongjun? Not to mention the 99 soul-dissipating gourd, which was Taoist Red Cloud's personal treasure. Even a post-celestial spiritual treasure would need to be nurtured for countless years. Unless one had the strength to crush the opponent, refining a treasure would take at least 80 to 100 years. Now, there was an expert hiding in the dark who kept attacking him. He must have known that Chen Qi didn't have the strength to fight back. Moreover, Zhenglun was attacking the 99 soul-dissipating gourd without caring about the consumption of energy. This meant that Lin Yuan couldn't relax his control over the 99 soul-dissipating gourd. Otherwise, he would lose this primordial spiritual treasure that could suppress Chen Qi and Zhenglun. He wasn't confident that he could deal with their soul-absorbing secret skill. At this moment, Chen Qi stopped using the secret skill and took out the demon-slaying pestle. He didn't want Zhenglun to bear all the pressure. Instead, he wanted to attack the 99 soul-dissipating gourd directly, in an attempt to destroy or knock down this primordial spiritual treasure. It was a standard 3-on-1 battle. Moreover, they had Lin Yuan under control. He could only watch anxiously but couldn't do anything about it. Apart from the Western sect, there weren't many who dared to use such a shameless way of fighting. After all, the cultivators of the celestial sect of wonders also cared about their reputation. Chapter 1103. Fortunately, the one who controls the 99 soul-scattering gourd has never been me. Lin Yuan's joking voice suddenly sounded. At the same time, the flood dragon's tail swung fiercely. Endless black water from the netherworld sprayed out and turned into a roaring black flood dragon. It kept biting the void, intending to force out the assassin who was hiding in the dark to attack him. Mosquito Daoren, who was hiding in the void, was shocked. Although he did not know why the Black Jiao could locate him, he still subconsciously retreated in the face of the Black Jiao formed by the liquid with dense netherworld aura. As he retreated, he immediately revealed his figure from the void. Very few people knew that Mosquito Daoren actually cultivated the Great Way of Space. Otherwise, Mosquito Daoren would not have been able to hide beside White Lotus Boy without being discovered by Taoist Jieyin. After killing the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, he would not have been able to fly to the Western Paradise and absorb the level 3 Dharma power of the 12 Lotus Seats. After all, Taoist Jieyin and Taoist Junti were heavenly way sages. Except for Tao ancestor Hongjun, who was in harmony with the way of heaven, they could almost be said to be invincible. Even if a few existences whose fighting capacity was not inferior to theirs appeared, they could not be compared with the invincible sages. If they really made a deadly enemy, they would be tortured to death sooner or later. However, except for some foreign species, heavenly way sages could be said to be supreme in all aspects in untainted land. If Mosquito Daoren did not cultivate the Great Way of Space, not to mention hiding his figure, his basic speed would be far inferior to that of heavenly way sages. In the web novels of Lin Yuan's previous life, there was a very reasonable sentence: if space does not appear, time is king. Although 3,000 of the 3,000 Grand Daos was only a quantifier to describe a large number of Grand Daos and not an exact number, these Grand Daos still had their differences. For example, the grand Taos of space, time, fate, karma, and so on were definitely much stronger than the basic grand Taos of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Of course, the specific strength depended on the user. For example, Pangu's Great Tao of Strength was not as powerful as the Great Tao of Time and Space. However, Pangu's Great Tao of Strength was deep enough to shatter any time and space with a single punch. Otherwise, the prehistorical world would not have become a great world as soon as it was created. If the basic Great Taos of the 5 elements were used well, they could also crush the more powerful Great Taos. After all, the foundation was the foundation, but the more powerful Great Taos were not so easy to comprehend. The prehistorical world had never lacked talented people, and there were also many people who practiced top Great Taos. However, the difference between walking 1 meter and walking 2 meters was like heaven and earth. There were definitely many experts who practiced the Great Tao of time and space in the prehistorical world, but most of them were like brothers among brothers. Mosquito Dauren believed that his attainments in the Great Tao of space were not bad. In the entire prehistorical world, only Patriarch Yang Mei, an extremely special existence, could surpass him in the Great Tao of space. But this Black Jiao, Mosquito Dauren, could not find the slightest aura of the Great Tao of space. This Black Jiao had not even comprehended its own Tao. Even if it wanted to prove its own Great Tao in the future, it would basically be in the direction of the Netherworld or the Ghost Tao. Under such circumstances, it was simply too strange for it to be able to discover him. Although Lin Yuan did not know the doubts in Mosquito Dauren's heart, even if he knew, he would not take it seriously. There was a path to heaven, but you did not take it, and there was no door to hell? Of all the places to play with the Great Tao of space, why did you come to the Tianwu world to show off your existence? The ancestors who played with the Great Tao of space in the prehistorical world were in the sea of misery outside the heavenly gate. He still had the willow branch that Patriarch Yang Mei had given him. Even if he could not comprehend the Great Tao of space in the future, ordinary Great Tao of space cultivators would not be able to hide in front of him. The Darkwada Black Jiao swung its tail again. Boom! The void shattered, and heaven and earth shook. Mosquito Dauren's expression changed again, and he retreated again and again. The problem he was facing now was equally awkward. After all, he cultivated the Great Tao of space, and his main divine powers relied on the Great Tao of space to perform. However, he did not know why the Black Jiao could not only accurately locate his position, but even the divine powers that he stored in the void that could break space at any time were as transparent as if they were transparent. Before he used the divine powers, they would dodge. Even if he hit it, it would only be a superficial wound, and could not cause any effective damage. More importantly, he was an existence that had comprehended his own Great Tao. Although he had not become a saint, he was much stronger than Generals Hang and Ha. When he came to this small world, he had already suppressed his cultivation, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was not suitable for him. Moreover, after using the Great Tao of space, he had been regarded as an alien by the will of this small world, and he constantly felt a repulsive force. Even if he could forcibly suppress this repulsive force, it was not a long-term solution. The repulsive force of the will of the world was not unfamiliar to him. When he followed his teacher's order to plot against the Western sect, Taoist Kundi and Taoist Jieyin also used a similar method. If it was not for his teacher's protection, he would have been killed long ago. 30 minutes. At most, it would take him 30 minutes. If he did not leave this world, who knew what kind of monster the will of this world would create to deal with him? Taking a step back, even if the cultivators and demonic beasts of Tianwu world were not his opponents, if the will of the world revealed his whereabouts to the incarnation of Tongtian sect leader, he would not be able to escape death. Mosquito Dauren put his palms together. When he opened them again, a large number of blood-winged black mosquitoes flew out from his palms and whizzed toward the Black Jiao. At the same time, he thought to himself, I have to get rid of this Black Jiao as soon as possible. These blood-winged black mosquitoes were his children, but they did not have their own will. At most, they were puppets, but they were extremely powerful. Once released, no matter what kind of existence the opponent was, They could bite them to death and absorb their flesh, blood, essence, and dharma power completely. During the investiture of the gods' cataclysm, Mosquito Dauren used these blood-winged black mosquitoes to kill the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit and absorb enough power to use the Great Tao of Space. With a flap of his wings, he arrived at the western Pure Land of ultimate bliss. Even the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, who was in the form of a 10,000-year black tortoise, could not withstand the bites of these blood-winged black mosquitoes. Even the White Lotus Boy, who was in charge of capturing the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, could not do anything to these blood-winged black mosquitoes. This proved the power of Mosquito Dauren's technique. Ridiculous! Lin Yuan's blue and white eyes flashed coldly. Previously, he was not sure who his opponent was, but after seeing these blood-winged black mosquitoes, if he still could not guess his opponent's identity, then he was too stupid. Chapter 1105. Mosquito Dauren sneered when he saw Lin Yuan control the nether water Black Jiao to transform into a human. Then he sneered at Lin Yuan, "Black Jiao, do you only have these two abilities?" Although he said that, Mosquito Dauren's eyes clearly flashed with wariness. After all, he knew himself best. He was a blood-winged black mosquito, one of the 5 most ferocious insects of primordial chaos. He was born as a mutant and naturally had the abilities of a mutant. For example, his mouth part was said to be able to break and absorb everything. Ordinary magic treasures would be damaged after 2 or 3 hits when they collided with his mouth part unless it was a treasure on the level of the Xian Huang Pagoda of heaven and earth. After all, it was a divine item that was said to be invincible once it was used. He could do nothing about it. However, other treasures like the 12 lotus platforms would not fare well against his mouth part. However, the black liquid controlled by the Black Jiao could be said to be his greatest nemesis. It was hard to say if he would be able to defeat that black humanoid if he used his mouth part as a black spear to clash head-on with that black humanoid. If he did, wouldn't he be afraid that he wouldn't die quickly enough if he ended up sucking in an existence similar to the water of the Styx? Blood-winged black mosquito. Another name is bloodthirsty black mosquito. Am I right? Lin Yuan's main body narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Why are you pretending to be afraid of the nether water? If I remember correctly, you were born from the nether blood sea. You are one of the 2 connate life forms born from the nether blood sea's origin. The other connate life form is the Nether River Patriarch, who is said to be, 'I will not die as long as the blood sea does not dry up.'" When he spoke up to this point, he paused and teased, "Let me guess. Are you thinking about how many moves you will need to kill me? Otherwise, you will find a chance to suck in 2 mouthfuls of nether realm black water and pretend to be heavily injured and weak to lure me over and kill me in one blow?" Mosquito Dauren snorted coldly and did not answer Lin Yuan's question directly. Instead, he said, "Black Jiao, I have thousands of incarnations. Unless you can destroy all the blood-winged black mosquitoes in the world, my true spirit can return even if you seal me in the Nether River. So, I'll give you 2 choices now. Either you obediently let me kill you, and we can both save some time and energy. Or, you step aside and I'll pretend that I never came to this minor kiliacosm. What do you think?" After being exposed by Lin Yuan, Mosquito Dauren wasn't very angry. However, he really couldn't understand why this Black Jiao would know about him. He had only left the mountain once under his teacher's order. He had been cultivating in the cave all this time. "Then I have to thank you for reminding me." Lin Yuan's eyes turned cold. The black figure in front of him shook its black spear. White flames came out of its body. Then he stared at Mosquito Dauren and said, "After all, there is nothing more suitable than fire to kill insects." Mosquito Dauren's eyes narrowed as he stared in disbelief at Lin Yuan. He didn't know what to say. He could only say, as expected of the death tribulation of the Hongjun Dao ancestor. This Black Jiao was not strong in Mosquito Dauren's eyes. The Black Jiao had not even reached the limit of this minor kiliacosm. Even if he reached that level, he would be an ordinary person in the great wasteland world and not a powerful person. However, this Black Jiao was very strange. First, he threw out the 99 soul-scattering gourd to subdue Generals Heng and Ha. Now, he was facing off against him. He clearly didn't have any trace of enlightenment, but he could see through the power of the spatial laws to a certain extent. Not only could he avoid his magical powers, but he could also lock onto his position at critical moments. Now, he had summoned something like the Nether River to form a water serpent to fight. Only now did he become serious. However, this Black Jiao clearly majored in the Nether River technique. How could he summon the flames that he hated in the blink of an eye? Speaking of which, he wasn't afraid of those flames. After all, he had accumulated more than 10 million blood-winged black mosquitoes over the years. Even if some of them were killed, he could still leave this minor kiliacosm safely. Hiss, whoosh, the black figure stood in front of Lin Yuan. It seemed to be imitating the breathing of a human. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. The white flames rose again and condensed into a mysterious pattern beside him. Mosquito Dauren didn't know what that mysterious pattern represented, but he could clearly feel that the surrounding temperature was dropping. Strange. Mosquito Dauren secretly clicked his tongue. Even though the Black Flood Dragon had clearly summoned flames, it instead caused the surrounding temperature to drop. It was as if this entire region had temporarily turned into a ghost realm. A minor kiliacosm that lacked spiritual energy was enough to make him suffer. If this place really turned into a ghost realm, it would be almost impossible for him to kill the Black Jiao even if he had to pay the price of damaging his foundation. This was because there was no spiritual energy in the ghost realm. There was only endless evil spirit and resentment. It was not a power that he could absorb at all. After all, he was only one of the 5 great ferocious insects. Although his bloodline was top-notch, he couldn't absorb much spiritual energy in the ghost realm. The mysterious pattern beside the black figure became more and more eye-catching. At the same time, Mosquito Dauren also realized that the spiritual energy around him was rapidly being sucked away. It was replaced by the aura of the netherworld, which was entwined with resentment and evil spirit. It could be said that at this moment, the Black Jiao directly turned this area into its home ground. Mosquito Dauren. He had lived for so long that he almost couldn't remember some things in the past. For example, why did he become a disciple of the Grand Elder? But at this moment he finally remembered those old things. During the God Investiture Tribulation, he called himself Mosquito Dauren. If someone asked him about his background, he would only say that he was a blood-winged black mosquito. He didn't mention that he was a bloodthirsty black mosquito, one of the 5 great ferocious insects that didn't belong to the 10 great ferocious insects. That identity was a complete disgrace to the mainstream cultivators in the untainted world. Therefore, he was placed under the command of the Grand Elder to learn the Tao Te Ching and learn the peaceful in action. He hoped that through these teachings, he could wash away the mark of the netherworld blood sea on his body. Reality proved that he did very well. He really washed away the mark of the netherworld blood sea and became one of the Grand Elder's disciples. He followed his master's order to go to the Western Pure Land to destroy the 12 Lotus platforms. That was something that both he and the Grand Supreme had taken as a gamble. Now, seeing that the surrounding environment was constantly turning into a ghost realm, Mosquito Dauren's face gradually revealed a terrified expression. Chapter 1106. Mosquito Dauren was the disciple of the Grand Supreme and belonged to the 3 sects of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Since he had never been tainted by the Chi of Calamity, he was not worried that he would die inexplicably in the cultivation tribulation. He traveled to various battlefields, and from time to time, he would crush and kill his enemies through force or other means. His purpose was only to gain experience. Until his teacher personally came to him and gave him the order. The matter of the Holy Mother of Turtle's spirit. Now that he thought about it, Mosquito Dauren had never regretted it. The Western sect's methods were even more strange and powerful than he had imagined. Therefore, the great Tao of space that he was so proud of might not have been hidden from the Taoist priest. Otherwise, why would the White Lotus boy happen to take the wrong cloth bag and open the cloth bag that he was hiding in? Moreover, when he was just released, he only felt extremely hungry and needed a large amount of flesh and blood to fill his hunger. Therefore, when he saw the original form of the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit that was beaten up by the Taoist priest, he did not even ask and directly devoured it. When a large number of coincidences gathered together, it was definitely not a coincidence. It was very likely that he had been discovered by the Taoist priest long ago. In addition, the aura on his body was the aura of the celestial sect of wonders that could not be concealed. Therefore, although the Taoist priest was not sure which sect he was from, he had indeed used the Tao of the celestial sect of wonders to cause the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit to die tragically in his hands. It also caused his teacher to pay a huge price to appease the furious Grandmaster of Heaven and protect him who did not know anything at that time. However, the matter of him barging into the Western Paradise and eating the 12th grade lotus platform was beyond the Taoist priest's expectations. After all, the old thief had probably only sensed him, and he was one of the disciples of the celestial sect of wonders. Therefore, he wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife and get rid of the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, who would pose a great threat to the Western sect in the future. Then, he secretly used this matter to sow discord between the three sects. Due to the unbearable past, Mosquito Dowran suddenly had a kind of fear and interest. He was afraid that once he fell into this ghost realm and absorbed the aura of the netherworld, he would once again become that incomparably ferocious bloodthirsty black mosquito. The black human figure casually stabbed the black spear in his hand into the void. His hands continuously formed mysterious seals. The pattern formed by the white flames behind him suddenly froze, and the surrounding ghost realm space was completely formed. Good timing. Mosquito Dowran suddenly shouted, immediately attracting Lin Yuan's attention. However, he did not make a move. Instead, he kept looking around secretly, as if he was trying to escape from Lin Yuan's hands using some kind of secret technique. However, how could he let the Mosquito Taoist leave so easily when he had already acted tough? The ghost realm was fully activated, covering both the humanoid shadow and the Mosquito Dowran. The Tao that can be said is not the Tao. A name that can be named, an extraordinary name. Mosquito Dowran began to recite the Tao Te Ching continuously after sensing that his surroundings had turned into a ghost town. He hoped to suppress his bloodthirsty side through this method and not absorb the ghostly aura of the netherworld around him. Lin Yuan sized up Mosquito Dowran with great interest, but he nodded silently in his heart. This fellow was actually still unwilling to absorb the netherworld aura when he was already in such a plight. Or rather, what was this fellow afraid of? After pondering for a moment, Lin Yuan said with a smile, Mosquito Dowran, I know that you can absorb the netherworld aura in the ghost realm. After all, you also came from the netherworld blood sea. So what if you have been practicing the Tao Te Ching for so many years? In the end, it is a cultivation method that only the human race should master. What's the use of practicing it? You were born in the netherworld blood sea. Absorbing the netherworld aura here will only be beneficial to you. Mosquito Dowran just turned a deaf ear to Lin Yuan's teasing and continued to recite the Tao Te Ching silently. Seeing Mosquito Dowran's indifference, Lin Yuan felt a burst of irritation for some reason. He sneered and said, Well, I'd like to see how long you, Mosquito Dowran, can hold on. As soon as he finished speaking, the power of incense on the interface jumped. A moment later, 4 ancient swords with their own characteristics appeared beside Lin Yuan. It was the immortal slaying sword formation formed by the 4 swords of death, slaughter, trap, and death. At the same time, Shangqing Heavenly Lord, who was secretly observing, changed his expression and murmured, How could this be? The immortal slaying sword formation was originally his specialty. Now that the 4 immortal slaying swords and the immortal slaying sword formation were in his hands, how could this Black Jiao find the 4 immortal slaying swords? In addition, the immortal slaying sword formation could not be set up casually. Without the help of the immortal slaying sword formation, at least 4 sage-to-be experts at the peak of the sage-to-be would be required to hold a sword in 4 directions and activate it with great Dharma power. However, Lin Yuan could directly activate the immortal slaying sword formation without the help of the immortal slaying sword formation, which was greatly beyond his expectation. He had already made up his mind to stay out of this matter. No matter what the fate of Generals Heng, Ha and Mosquito Darren would be, as long as he felt that they had paid a sufficient price, he would naturally end this matter and would not attack them again. After all, he was a big shot standing at the peak of the Great Thousand World and would not be calculative about every little thing. Of course, if he felt that Mosquito Darren had not paid a sufficient price, his personality would also affect his 3 separations. Naturally, he would not let this matter go. With the command of Lin Yuan's mind, the 4 swords each took their own positions and formed a huge sword formation. They constantly shot out blood-red sword shadows toward Mosquito Darren. So that's how it is. Amazing, really amazing. Shangqing Heavenly Lord carefully observed the 4 swords that Lin Yuan had summoned. However, the power and murderous aura that they should have were not even 1/10 of them. It was not until now that he realized that there was nothing wrong with the ability of his original body. He did not even know that the 4 immortal slaying swords had been stolen. It was that although the Black Jiao had indeed summoned the immortal slaying sword formation to deal with Mosquito Darren, it was different from the real immortal slaying sword formation. The immortal slaying sword formation here was just a random image taken from the long river of time. Under the enhancement of the incense power, it had a part of its past power. However, it was still a poor imitation. It could be said that it had the appearance but not the spirit. Those red sword shadows seemed to be the sword chi of the immortal slaying sword formation, but in fact, the Black Jiao had imitated the incense power into the immortal slaying sword chi and blasted it on Mosquito Darren. It was no wonder that the immortal slaying sword formation, which was known as the number 1 killing formation in the untainted land, was not even 1/10 of its original power and murderous aura. Mosquito Darren was still silently reciting the Tao Te Ching. Soon, a thick layer of mana shield appeared on his body. Chapter 1107. The Tao Te Ching could be said to be a powerful counterattack against Hongjun by the Grand Supreme. After the investiture of the gods, the great Zhou dynasty ruled the world and enjoyed the fate of the country for 800 years. The royal family's prestige collapsed and the country was torn apart. The feudal lords rose and attacked and annexed each other. Gradually, the spring and autumn period became chaotic. In this chaotic period, countless powerful figures emerged. There was no need to mention the ancestors of the various schools of thought. In fact, there were only a dozen schools of thought that left their names. However, at that time, there were far more than just 100 schools of thought. Heroes and sages were also constantly emerging, and there were always a few names that could not be ignored. Confucianism, Confucius. Taoism, Laozi. School of Moz. Not to mention the school of Yin Yang and its ancestor Zhou Yen, which was separated from the Taoism. It was a game between Haoyan and the Grand Supreme. Who knew which of the sages in the world were the spies of the powerful figures in the untainted land and which of them were the powerful figures born in time? But no matter what, Laozi, Li Er, appeared because the Grand Supreme did not hesitate to gamble his own good corpse incarnation and reincarnate into the mortal world to plan this great merit for himself. Before the appearance of the Tao Te Ching, the Grand Elder was generally addressed as the hierarch of the Ren school. Li Er traveled to various countries to promote Taoism. Before he left Hangu Pass and became a Buddha, he gradually became known as the Tao Ancestor. This behavior was tantamount to a provocation and declaration of war against Hongjun. Because everyone who knew about the existence of the untainted land knew that the Tao Ancestor was Hongjun from the beginning. After Laozi was born, the Tao Ancestor gradually became Li Er. After dealing with Hongjun, Li Er lightly rode out of Hangu Pass on his green ox and transformed into Shakyamuni to perform the beard transformation Buddha. He connected the whole incident. At that time, the Grand Supreme was already a heavenly sage. Even if he founded Taoism and went with the general trend to obtain great merit, it was meaningless. Firstly, he was already one of the sages of the heavenly Tao. Naturally, he could no longer rely on his merits to become a sage of the human Tao. Furthermore, during the chaotic times of the spring and autumn period, the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors were not just for show. With their hatred for Hongjuan's disciples, if the Grand Supreme wanted to become a sage of the human Tao, they might think that this was another scheme of Hongjuan's. They would definitely interfere and cause a lot of trouble. Therefore, the Grand Supreme had completed the stealing of the position of the Taoist master step by step and attacked the Western sect at the same time. Perhaps in the eyes of the Grand Supreme at that time, the battle between the celestial sect of wonders and the Western sect was actually nothing much. It was just Hongjuan's scheme. Then the question was, where did the power of merit that was obtained after the establishment of Taoism go? The answer was Tao Te Ching. In the world of low-level martial arts, the Tao Te Ching might be an ordinary Taoist scripture with some principles recorded in it. Even the cultivation method of Laozi in it was an unsolved mystery. However, in a world like the untainted world, the Tao Te Ching was definitely a real treasure of merit. Its grade was definitely not low. However, it was also during the spring and autumn period that the Grand Supreme had done too much. Therefore, after the calamity of the journey to the west began, the celestial sect of wonders was defeated by the Western sect. It was obvious whether Hongjun had interfered behind this. Interestingly, many people thought that Patriarch Bodhi was the incarnation of Buddha, but in fact, he was not. Because there were many interpretations of the journey to the west. For example, Sun Wukong's cultivation method was said to be the great way of heaven immortal art, and some said it was the great way of heaven immortal art. However, there was no doubt that Bodhi had given Sun Wukong the cultivation method of the celestial sect of wonders. In the original book, there was a poem that said, "Tao is the most mysterious. Don't treat Jin Dan as an ordinary thing. If you don't meet a good person to teach you, you will be speechless." Have you ever seen a disciple of the Western sect of wonders cultivate Jin Dan instead of Jin Dan? From the beginning, this heaven's equal sage of the Eastern land did not aim to cultivate Buddhism. It was just that the celestial sect of wonders was defeated in the calamity of the journey to the west. Therefore, in the end, the monkey became the victorious fighting Buddha of the Western sect. Mosquito Daoran sat cross-legged in the gloomy demonic region and kept reciting the contents of the Tao Te Ching. His facial features, which had become somewhat ferocious due to the influence of the nether ghost Qi, gradually became peaceful. He constantly emitted a natural and indifferent aura, as if he had completely merged with the world. When the Black Jiao and Mosquito Daoran showed their skills, it might be nothing in the untainted world. However, in the eyes of the guards of the Celestial Gate, it was undoubtedly at the level of immortals fighting. After all, the Tianwu world was a small kiliacosm. Coupled with the fact that someone was secretly suppressing it, it was unable to complete the 3 realms. Not only was there an upper limit to the realm of these cultivators and demonic beasts, there was even a gap in the originally powerful cultivation techniques due to the changes in the great Tao of heaven and earth. Those powerful techniques and divine abilities that originally only existed in the records of cultivation techniques could not be used. When one reached the realm of ascension, it was simply a wrong path. If someone were to delve into these techniques and divine abilities, Qi deviation would be the most basic operation. However, the skills of the Black Jiao and Mosquito Daoran, one of them revealed a set of seals and directly turned the world into the gloomy demonic region. The other was reciting scriptures that they could not understand. However, he was one with the world and was not affected by the gloomy demonic region. The Shangqing Heavenly Lord who was secretly observing looked at the Mosquito Daoran who was reciting the Tao Te Ching with a gloomy gaze. For a moment, he was speechless. He had always thought that when he joined forces with his 2 elder brothers to scheme against that old man, Hongjun, all these years of running around the myriad realms, he had barely reached the stage where he could exchange blows with Hongjun outside of the Eldritch world. This was already a very impressive progress. However, he did not expect that he had still underestimated the heroes of the world. There was no need to talk about old ancestor Yang Mei who was currently in the Sea of Sufferings. At his peak, he was able to directly pull Hongjun who had already merged with the heavenly Tao into the river of time to battle in the Eldritch world. In the end, they were evenly matched. As for that big brother of his, It seemed that he had not been idle all these years. From the Tao Te Ching, he actually could not sense the presence of a heavenly Tao sage. However, if he were to be serious, this power was indeed the power of a sage. No, calling it a sage was a bit of an insult to this power. This was the power of a chaos Daluo golden immortal. Without the support of the primordial violet energy, without entering the heavenly Tao, earth Tao, and human Tao, he had the power that was not inferior to a sage. His elder brother had probably followed him and schemed against that old man, Hongjun. Although he was still one of the 6 heavenly sages in name, he had already transformed from a prisoner to an existence that was not inferior to Hongjun in the Eldritch world. He was a sage of the great Tao. The Shangqing heavenly lord snorted coldly. Staring at the mosquito Daoren who was reciting the Tao Te Ching, he murmured, "Is this a warning to me not to attack your disciple? Is the hatred of the Gui Ling going to end here? Don't even think about it." Chapter 1108. The Power of the Primordial Chaos Daluo. The Grand Pure One is not simple. Ever since Lin Yuan realized that his cultivation was damaged, the system, which had been pretending to be dead, was blown out. Although Lin Yuan did not communicate with the system, he still thought of some things in his mind. Mosquito Daoren recited the Tao Te Ching, which was tantamount to showing his roots. Without a doubt, Mosquito Daoren was definitely one of the Grand Pure One's favorite disciples. After all, this Mosquito Daoren, one of the primordial 5 ferocious worms, became famous in order to buy time for the Grand Pure One to become a Buddha. But now, it seemed that things were not as simple as he had expected. Attacking the Western sect was really just a matter of convenience for the Grand Pure One, and it was a matter of convenience. The Grand Pure One's incarnation, Li Er, went to the mortal world and created Taoism. He passed the position of the sect master of Ren and the primordial purple Qi to the great Taoist master Xian Du. He also used the heaven and earth exquisite black and yellow pagoda, the Vajra bracelet, and the Tao Te Ching to suppress the luck of Taoism. Thus, it caused the origin of the great Tao to tremble and gave a Tao fruit to the Grand Pure One. The Grand Pure One abolished the position of the heavenly Tao sage and established a sect. He received the support of endless merit of the great Tao. His realm fell to the peak of the sage-to-be, and he regained the primordial chaos Daluo golden immortal realm. After calling himself the Tao sage, he became a true Tao ancestor. Even the profound sect belonged to the Tao. Since the appearance of the Tao Te Ching, the Grand Pure One could truly transcend the world and be free. He was no longer under the jurisdiction of the heavenly Tao. The system showed words of praise. Of course, if it was still the heavenly Tao of the primordial world, it would definitely be furious after being stabbed in the back by the Grand Pure One. However, the problem was that he was just an incomplete origin of the heavenly Tao of the primordial world. Ever since Hongjun merged with the heavenly Tao and stole its authority, he became a special existence that wandered in the universe. Therefore, it was not unhappy that the Grand Pure One had escaped the control of the heavenly Tao. Instead, it was still in the primordial world because the Grand Pure One still stayed in the primordial world after he transcended. It must have had a plot against Hongjun. It was happy that Hongjun had a strong enemy. But the problem is, Lin Yuan and the system opened their mouths almost at the same time. Both of them looked surprised. Logically speaking, the Grand Supreme had established Taoism, attained the status of Tao Saint, and accepted the Taoist sect under his wing. To Hongjun, such an action was not as simple as losing the position of Tao ancestor. If Hongjun was not an innate god and had obtained the absolute right to rule the Eldritch world, he would not be a match for the Grand Supreme at all. Otherwise, the Grand Elder would not have stayed in the untainted world to continue the game with Hongjun after stabbing him in the back. After all, the world of cultivation was the same in that world. The law of the jungle was the key. If one did not have the strength of a chess player, the chess player on the other side did not need to play with him at all. He could just kill him directly. But the biggest problem was that the Grand Supreme's series of actions were done right under Hongjun's nose. Why did this happen? Was Hongjun's eyes covered, Or did he not want to care about it and deliberately let the situation develop to this point? If it was the former, could there be an existence equal to Hongjun in the entire Eldritch world who held back Hongjun when the Grand Supreme moved and prevented Hongjun from interfering with the Grand Supreme's Dao? If it was the latter, they even had to carefully consider whether the Grand Supreme was an enemy or a friend. The most terrible thing was that no matter which of these two possibilities was true, it was not good news for Lin Yuan. Because in the Eldritch world, there were some existences who could shake Hongjun, who was in harmony with the Tao of Heaven, but they were definitely old monsters at the level of Yang Mei and Shichen. Since they did not participate in the suppression of Hongjun back then, they might not do anything today, countless years later. Therefore, the person who held back Hongjun was definitely someone who had a deep hatred for Hongjun. After counting, there were only a few people who were either powerhouses of the human Tao or powerhouses of the Tao. There were several versions of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors since ancient times. After eliminating the least possibility of the 3 sovereigns, Fuxi, Zhurong, Shenong, and Fuxi, Nuwa, and Shenong, it was certain that no matter which version of the 3 sovereigns there were 2 powerful figures, Fuxi and Shenong. The remaining one, whether it was Suiren or the Yellow Emperor, was not easy to deal with. Especially the Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, who repeatedly jumped between the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, was an absolute hero who mastered killing and conquering. Lin Yuan even personally believed that these 4 versions were wrong. The real 3 sovereigns should be the 3 human leaders, Yu Chao, Suiren, and Ji Sheng, who were recorded in Zhuangzi. However, although the 3 human sovereigns shared the fruit of the heavenly way sage, the 3 of them were not to be trifled with. If they set up a trap to trick Hongjun into the fire cloud cave, it was definitely more than enough to hold Hongjun back for 100 years. As for the powerhouse of the Tao, there was nothing to say. There was only the primordial spirit of the Earth Empress, who had turned into Samsara, Empress Pingxin. Although Empress Pingxin, who was supposed to be on par with Hongjun, became a prisoner in the netherworld, if she had any plans, whether it was the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva of the Western religious sect, the 10 Yama kings of the underworld, the immortals of the Xianmen and the Divine Way, or even the mysterious Lord of Mount Tai, they might not be able to gain any benefits in the netherworld. After all, Empress Pingxin was invincible in the netherworld. If she wanted to do something, Hongjuan's real body had to suppress her, and it would take a long time. Was there anyone in the untainted land who was easy to deal with? Not to mention the system itself, which had been causing trouble for Hongjun. Tong Tian, who was sent out by Sanqing, was also a top powerhouse in any great wide world. Therefore, for countless years, the system and Tong Tian were not the only ones who were secretly active. The powerhouses in the untainted land were also trying to find ways to save themselves, such as the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Dao Pingxin, and Taishang Tao Ancestor. Now, they might have completely gotten rid of the Black Jiao's control. Death test. It was not necessarily a person or a thing. In recent years, Hongjun had been going against the flow and ruling the untainted land alone. The others had been complaining about him for a long time. It was impossible to change the old habits. Sooner or later, a long war would break out. The secret brewing in the heaven martial world was probably just a fuse. From Lin Yuan's point of view, it was a good thing for the overall situation. After all, when fighting against Hongjun, he could have a group of powerful allies, which would greatly increase his chances of winning. However, from the perspective of his own interests, if they met, how should he face Empress Pingxin? What attitude would Empress Pingxin have towards him? Chapter 1109. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and opened his mouth to speak. Suddenly, a voice exploded in his mind. Lin Yuan, if you kill this mosquito Daoren for me, I will reward you generously. This was the voice of Shangqing Heavenly Lord. Lin Yuan was speechless. Therefore, it was better to rely on oneself than on anyone else. Among the Sanqing family, although the Grand Supreme had always played the role of a big brother and a peacemaker, they were still brothers after all. Their relationship was not bad. Even when the Sanqing family joined forces to plot against Hongjun, The Grand Supreme and Yuanshi were not selfish at all and sent the youngest Tongtian sect leader out. But now, because of the old grudge between the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit and the Mosquito Daoran, Shangqing Heavenly Lord actually asked him to kill the Mosquito Daoran without hesitation. This was really, he did not know what to say. With the Tongtian sect leader's protective and vengeful character, he was probably beyond saving. Seeing that Lin Yuan did not respond, Shangqing Heavenly Lord clenched his teeth and communicated with Lin Yuan through divine thoughts again. The 4 celestial slaying swords are still in my original body's hands. If you help me get rid of this fiend, I will sacrifice my face and ask for the 4 celestial slaying swords and the celestial slaying formation map for you. So what? Although Hongjun did not have a good reputation, the great Tao of 3 corpses was indeed something. Although the cultivation of the 3 corpses' incarnations could not surpass the original body, most of the 3 corpses' incarnations were transformed from treasures. Most of them were not inferior to the original body in terms of combat power. They even mastered some techniques that the original body would be envious of. More importantly, the 3 corpses' incarnations had independent consciousness. Although they would listen to the instructions of the original body, when they were independent, it was not wrong to say that the 3 corpses' incarnations were 3 independent cultivators. Just like how Shangqing Heavenly Lord was one of the 3 corpses' incarnations of the Tongtian sect leader, but he still addressed the original body as a fellow cultivator. As for whether his words could be trusted or not, after all, he was one of the Sanqing. Although the Tongtian sect leader did not care about his reputation as much as the Heavenly Lord Yuanshi, he could still stick to his words. In addition, the Tongtian sect leader had asked Meng Qi to kill Mosquito Daoran, which meant that Meng Qi had formed a karma with the Taishang. On the other hand, the Shangqing Heavenly Lord had also formed a karma with Meng Qi. If the Shangqing Heavenly Lord did not give Meng Qi the 4 immortal slaying swords and the immortal slaying formation map, the karma would harm Meng Qi sooner or later. Junior will try his best. Lin Yuan's eyes narrowed slightly as he agreed with a smile. What was there to be afraid of having karma with the Tao Saint Grand Elder? Ever since he had been saved by the system and sent to the Heaven Martial World, he had formed karma with Hongjun. Lin Yuan was very clear about this. From the start, he had been trying to level the relationship between himself and the system because he knew that he did not owe the system any karma. Although the system had saved him, it had also nurtured him as a weapon to deal with Hongjun. Thus, he did not owe the system anything. Then there was the problem. Since he had already formed a karma with Hongjun, so what if there was another Tao Saint? If he could not defeat Hongjun, his body and soul would be destroyed. Senior Luo Ho was an excellent example. If he could defeat Hongjun, it meant that he would not be afraid when facing the Taishang Tao Saint. He would just have to use his strength to fight. The main thing was that the Taishang's personality was there. If one said that he was quiet and did not do anything, there would be no problem. He could play the role of a good big brother and a good teacher. However, when it came to matters that would affect his fundamental interests, the Taishang would not be heartless. Lin Yuan did not believe that the Taishang would fight to the death with him for the sake of Mosquito Daoran. There were no good people in the Eldritch world. Be it Sanqing, Hongyun, Hongjun, or even the various Eldritch world bosses, if one were to compare them seriously, one would not be able to find half a good person. In other words, those who were truly good would not be able to leave their names in the harsh environment of the Eldritch world. They would have been eaten clean. Different from those stories that had been processed by art, the real cultivation world was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Although it was not to the extent that people would kill for treasures and seek revenge every day, similar things were done by everyone. Although the shameless duo of the Western sect was extremely shameless, on the other hand, they were the most honest existences. Shameless was shameless, evil was evil, and they did not hide it. In terms of actions, one did not care about one's heart. In terms of heart, there was no saint. This sentence was applicable in any world and any place. As for protecting one's shortcomings, the Tongtian sect leader's character of protecting one's shortcomings was the same as the Yuanshi Tianzuan's pride. The latter did not care who the problem was. As long as one embarrassed him, he would fight it out. However, the Tong Tian sect leader did not care who one was or what one's background was. If one dared to touch the person he liked, he would definitely kill that person. However, protecting one's shortcomings did not mean that the Tong Tian sect leader would do it at all costs. Just like now, although Mosquito Daoren, who killed the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, was close at hand, Shangqing Tianzuan, who had the ability to kill him, did not do it directly. Instead, he did not hesitate to use the 4 celestial slaying swords and the celestial slaying sword diagram as the price to ask Lin Yuan to do it. It was obvious that he did not want to fall out with the Taishang, but he also wanted to avenge the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit. Naturally, it was the same when it came to the Taishang. When Lin Yuan's cultivation of the scripture of all beings was completed, he would definitely not be inferior to a sage of the Great Path. Coupled with the supremacy of the Great Path, Lin Yuan's strength would definitely not be inferior to that of an Origin Daluo Golden Immortal with the help of the scripture of all beings. If he went to the Tianwu world, even Hongjun at his peak would have to temporarily avoid him. He did not believe that the Taishang would fall out with him over a Mosquito Daoren and insist on a life-and-death battle. System: deduct the power of incense and increase the power of the celestial slaying sword formation. A cold light flashed through Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes, and he silently communicated with the system in his mind. In the instant that he said this, the power of incense suddenly dropped and directly fell to 300 million. Although Lin Yuan was pained, he could understand. Laozi had bestowed the original copy of the Tao De Sutra to Yishi. Apparently, after Yishi finished comprehending it, he sent the original copy to the Red Cloud Cave to be used to suppress the human race's fortune. The Tao De Sutra, which had already absorbed a lot of power of virtue, transformed into a supreme treasure of human virtue. Although Mosquito Daoren had only recited the Tao De Sutra, Lin Yuan's celestial slaying sword formation was not the real deal. In order to break through the defenses of the Tao De Sutra, it was not difficult to understand why he would expend a lot of incense. Furthermore, once he killed Mosquito Daoren, wouldn't the 4 immortal slaying swords and the immortal slaying sword formation truly fall into his hands? This might be a small loss, but the benefits were indeed quite significant. Words are not good, but words of praise are not good. Those who are kind do not argue, but those who argue are not good. Mosquito Daoren was still reciting the Tao De Sutra. Lin Yuan, who had read the contents of the Tao De Sutra in his past life, could vaguely remember that Mosquito Daoren had already reached the end of the book. If his guess was correct, once he finished reciting the entire book, it would definitely be the time for Mosquito Daoren to counterattack. Chapter 11:10. The Way of Heaven, Benefits but Not Harms. The Way of the Sage, for the sake of not fighting. Lin Yuan did not know how much content was in the Tao Te Ching written by the Taishang Shu. Most of the books circulating in the future were missing due to various reasons such as natural disasters and man-made disasters. Many of the books even had monster-like existences. However, when he heard Mosquito Daoren's words, the Tao Te Ching that Lin Yuan knew had already ended. Moreover, these 2 sentences carried an inexplicable power. Translated into plain words, it meant that the law of nature was to let everything benefit without harming them. The sage's code of conduct should be to not compete with others in everything he did. If there was no mythological background, there would be no problem with this sentence according to the above understanding. However, with the mythological background, these 2 sentences were equivalent to completely denying Hongjun. People only knew that the destined 6 sages became heavenly sages after being bestowed with the Hong Meng immortal Qi by Hongjun. They had to respectfully address Hongjun as their teacher. However, if they did not participate in this grand scheme, who would have thought that the so-called destined 6 sages were just prisoners and dolls? They had been thinking about how to escape and overthrow Hongjun's rule from the beginning to the end. The moment the Taishang Shu wrote the Tao Te Ching, it was tantamount to declaring war on Hongjun. After these 2 sentences were read, the endless power of morality suddenly appeared from all directions and supported Mosquito Daoren's body. In the tide of the power of morality, the Sinluo demonic region created by Lin Yuan was as fragile as a piece of white paper. It was easily torn apart and the real world was revealed again. Lin Yuan's face suddenly turned pale and a look of horror flashed across his eyes. This Sinluo demonic region was not a small trick. As the world was getting closer and closer to completion, he condensed a piece of underworld soil with the help of the underworld black water. Every inch of land required more than 50 kilograms of underworld black water. If he wanted to condense an inch of underworld soil without carrying out a large-scale massacre, Lin Yuan would have to work day and night for 3 full days to condense a piece of underworld soil. This piece of underworld soil combined the power of the underworld river that Lin Yuan currently controlled with the power of the Hungry Ghost Path and the Azura Path's reincarnation power. He even borrowed many characteristics of the law of space from the willow branch that ancestor Yang Mei had given him. This was how he created the Sinluo demonic region. However, Mosquito Daoren had only read the Tao Te Ching once and directly broke his 3 Luo Qing. If he wanted to create another piece of Luo demonic region, he would have to start. Amazing! Lin Yuan took a deep breath, calmed down his mood, and praised from the bottom of his heart. The Tao Te Ching deserved to be called a merit treasure. For the first time, he truly felt the gap between himself and the real big shots in the untainted land. However, Lin Yuan was not discouraged. After all, the Tao Te Ching was a merit treasure. With the help of the Tao Te Ching, it was very easy for it to break his Sinluo demonic region. If it could not break it, Lin Yuan would have to think about what went wrong. Now, the Heaven Martial World had not completed the 3 realms and 6 paths. Lin Yuan could only imitate a similar power. When the world was completed, his Sinluo demonic region would naturally be supported by the power of the world. He dared not say that he would be recognized by the Great Way, but he would really become the underworld of the Heaven Martial World. At that time, not to mention the Tao Te Ching, even the Tao Te Ching would not necessarily be able to destroy this underworld. Many people would combine the netherworld and the netherworld together. In fact, it was different. The netherworld was just the layout of the Western sect. It combined the rules that existed in the netherworld to create a set of reincarnation processes. There were 5 types of immortals: heaven, earth, man, ghost, and god. Among them, ghost immortals were the weakest. In a sense, the netherworld was a subordinate unit. Normally speaking, when the underworld was mentioned, practically everyone's first reaction would be the underworld. This was because the legends of the 10 kings of hell and the 18 levels of hell were too widespread. This caused many people to think that the underworld was referring to the underworld. But in fact, the netherworld was just a government office built in the underworld. Fengdu, Mount Tai, and the netherworld corresponded to the Tao of the Tao Te Ching, the god of Haoyin, and the Buddhism of the Western religious sect respectively. They divided the position of the Saint of Earth and completely restricted Empress Pingxin. Anyone who knew a little about the netherworld knew that the Lord of Mount Tai had always been a mysterious existence. The ones who really fought fiercely in the underworld were Divine Ti, Yulei, the ghost emperors of 5 directions, Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, and the 10 kings of hell, who represented the Tao Te Ching and the Buddhism Te Ching. After all, although the Lord of Mount Tai was backed by the Heavenly Court, all the immortals in the Heavenly Court, except for the heavenly soldiers and heavenly generals formed by the great cultivators who were ranked on the immortal list, all the immortals in the Heavenly Court had a backer. When they gave Haoyin face, they would call him God or Great Emperor. When they didn't give him face, they wouldn't listen to him. How could Haoyin really ignore their feelings and forcibly activate the list of deification to control these immortals? Even worse, Sanqing's incarnations like the Lord of the Tao Te Ching and the Lord of Lingbao served in the Heavenly Court. Haoyin could only coax and worship them. Even if Hongjun was dragged out, Haoyin had to call them senior brothers. The weakness of the Heavenly Court was not a matter of a day or two. It was said that the Lord of Mount Tai was the first successor to the throne of the Earth Empress. In other words, if Empress Pingxin suddenly died one day, the Lord of Mount Tai could take over the throne of the Earth Empress, who controlled the netherworld and samsara. However, in fact, not to mention whether there was any succession in the untainted world, Empress Pingxin was invincible in the netherworld and was an invincible sage. Lin Yuan really couldn't think of any accident that could kill Empress Pingxin. If such a thing really happened, the netherworld would be plowed by the plow. How could the Lord of Mount Tai live alone? Therefore, the Lord of Mount Tai was not really mysterious. From the perspective of the weakness of the heavenly court, this branch of the underworld only needed to take care of its own affairs. At the same time, it was responsible for communicating with Empress Pingxin and supervising the struggle between the underworld and the underworld of Fengdu. It was to ensure that neither side would do anything too excessive. Otherwise, if Empress Pingxin was angry, no one would have a good ending. To put it in a more humble way, the underworld of Mount Tai did not have the ability to compete with the Buddhist and Taoist sects for who was the head of the underworld. To put it in a more grandiose way, the underworld of Mount Tai was established by the heavenly court to mediate and judge the struggle between the Buddhist and Taoist sections. There were many people who caused trouble in the underworld, especially in the netherworld. It could be said that it was plagued with disasters. However, there were not many who caused trouble in the netherworld. Even if there were, they would not have a good ending. The Tianwu world did not have the 5 major systems of heaven, earth, man, ghost and god. If the netherworld was established, Lin Yuan would be in a state of supremacy. Chapter 11:11. Black Jiao, your realm of ghosts has been broken. What else do you have? Just use it. Mosquito Daoran looked at the Black Jiao seriously. He held the handle of his spear with one hand and pointed the sharp spearhead to the ground. Lin Yuan did not take over the conversation. Although Mosquito Daoran had broken the realm of ghosts by reciting the Tao Te Ching, he did not attack immediately. Instead, he signaled for Lin Yuan to continue attacking. Under such circumstances, if Lin Yuan continued to be aggressive, he would inevitably be at a disadvantage. In fact, Mosquito Daoran's behavior was not rare in the untainted world. Some people called it a Tao discussion. In layman's terms, it meant to learn from each other. If Lin Yuan answered, no matter what the result was, if Mosquito Daoran died in his hands, it would be his fault. In the future, when the world was repaired or he entered the untainted world, the Grand Supreme, Xuandu, Taoism, and the mighty figures of the human sect would have plenty of excuses to find trouble with him. Because this was a learning from each other, not a life and death battle. Mosquito Daoran, I respect you as a senior. Today, I can leave you a whole corpse. I will accept this karma. After pondering for a moment, Lin Yuan's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. He said jokingly, Senior, have you forgotten why you came all the way to this spirit space? Now you think I am difficult to deal with and want to find an excuse to get rid of me. Do you really think I am a fool? Surnamed Lin? Mosquito Daoran was shocked. He had expected that Lin Yuan would refuse his request for a Tao discussion. However, he did not expect that the Black Jiao in front of him was surnamed Lin. Although he did not know the growth path of this Black Jiao, he was sure that the dragon bloodline in his body was very pure. Although he was only a flood dragon, in terms of bloodline density, he was not inferior to the dragons of the ancestral dragon's generation, but compared to the dragons of the 4 seas in today's untainted world, he was probably not inferior to a true dragon. With such a pure bloodline, Mosquito Daoran wouldn't be surprised even if this Black Jiao told him that it was the son of some prehistoric almighty being. But this Black Jiao's surname was not Ao. Mosquito Daoran's lips curled into a sinister grin. Me? Good, good, good. It seems like you, the Black Jiao, are really lucky. But that's fine, since you are not of the dragon race's bloodline, I won't have to worry about the Ao clan's revenge anymore. The bloodline of the 4 Seas Dragon clan? Suddenly, the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were watching the battle were shocked. They looked at Lin Yuan and Mosquito Daoran with fear in their eyes. The fact that the Black Jiao was not a native of the Tianwu world was something that had been determined since a long time ago. This was because the Black Jiao was an existence that appeared out of thin air. Even if the various forces tried their best, they still couldn't find the birthplace and clan of the Black Jiao. How could an existence that could cultivate to the limit of the Tianwu world be a fool? It was just that no one had brought this matter to the surface. Even the matter of the reincarnation of the demon emperor was just a joke. Not to mention the great cultivators on the human side, even the demon beasts of the desolate demon realm were unwilling to enter the cycle of reincarnation. They would prepare a grotto heaven and leave behind countless backup plans. Even if they successfully completed their reincarnation, it was normal for them to not appear in the world for decades. After all, anyone in the cultivation world could be said to have enemies everywhere. Even if there was no hatred, it was naturally excellent to have one less cultivation resource. Therefore, once they appeared in the world, they would be almost as strong as when they were at their peak. For example, although Yang Qinglin of the Blood God sect successfully completed his reincarnation, if it wasn't for Lin Yuan's strong rise in the northern frontier and his suppression of the sects, who knew when this ancient cultivator would appear in public? A reincarnation of the demon emperor of the spirit awakening realm, wouldn't it be a joke? However, Lin Yuan had indeed pulled the tiger skin well back then and displayed the deterrence of the ancient demon court to the extreme. After all, those who were not powerful could not defeat Lin Yuan, and those powerful figures were very clear about one thing: the ancient demon court was not destroyed. Instead, it disintegrated on its own for some reason and disappeared in the long river of history. Now, the top figures among the guardians of the heavenly gates were most likely small fries in the era when the ancient demon court was active. These small fries had become big shots and lived until now. Who could guarantee that the experts of the ancient demon court had fallen? Therefore, under the premise that there were no huge benefits, indeed, no one was willing to offend Lin Yuan. After that, Lin Yuan rose in the northern frontier and established the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Although it attracted the attention of some people, they did not get much benefit. The Black Jiao pulled out a background that seemed to be even more terrifying than the ancient demon court in the Endless Sea. Moreover, there were indeed experts from other worlds who came to suppress all enemies for Lin Yuan. In a short 3 minutes, it was enough to scare these big shots who were used to being at ease. However, where Lin Yuan came from and how powerful the forces behind him were still unsolved mysteries. There were experts from the outside world who entered the Sky Martial world to deal with Lin Yuan. This could be said to be unexpected, but it was also reasonable. The natives of the Sky Martial world did not know how vast the various worlds were, but only a small number of people could obtain the cultivation resources of any world. This was an ecological environment that could not be avoided in any world. Therefore, the more powerful the forces behind Lin Yuan were, the more enemies he would have. This was something that could not be avoided. For example, the cultivators of the Sky Martial world, whether it was the imperial court, sect, or aristocratic family, there were many conflicts between them. However, in the end, there were almost no deep hatred between them. 99% of them were for resources and benefits, and there were very few boring disputes over face. However, now it seemed that the background of the dragon race of the Four Seas was not simple. The Endless Sea was originally ruled by the whale race. With the appearance of the dragon race of the Four Seas, and after a long period of war, the powerful whale race was killed and expelled. The overlord of the Endless Sea was changed to the dragon race of the Four Seas. This was something that everyone knew, but no one knew where the powerful dragon race of the Four Seas came from. They only knew that when they appeared, they had the strength to contend with the overlords of the Endless Sea and the natives. After reproducing for so many years, the dragon bloodline demonic beasts became nobles among the demonic beasts. However, it was also a fact that the throne of the dragon race of the Four Seas was not stable. Not to mention the demonic beasts and the various sea demon clans in the Endless Sea, even the guardians of the Heavenly Gate wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to bite off a piece of fat meat from the Endless Sea. However, when the young man in the blood-red robe finished speaking, immediately many people gave up on this idea. When they looked at the Endless Sea, there was a faint trace of fear. Chapter 11-12. Although the two cultivators from the outside world who were dressed like generals were suppressed by the Scarlet Gourd as soon as they entered the arena, the Heavenly Gate Guardians who had a little bit of eyesight could see that the other party's strength was definitely not inferior to the top among them. Moreover, The purity and quality of the energy was far above theirs. The moment they stepped out of the heavenly gate, their faces revealed looks of disdain. Obviously, they came from a world that was countless times stronger than the Tianwu world. That was to be expected. These guys were here to deal with the Black Jiao. The Black Jiao's background was mysterious, and it was definitely far beyond their expectations. This was because the forces in the Tianwu world were not completely ignorant of the myriad of worlds. For example, the Wandering Immortal sect was a powerful force that had established branches in various worlds. However, the top experts they knew did not dare to say that they could casually cross over to any world and still maintain the ability to crush everything. However, the experts summoned by the Black Jiao could obviously do that. Therefore, these guys who came to look for trouble with the Black Jiao, even if their backgrounds were inferior to the Black Jiao's, they were still far stronger than the Tianwu world. However, even such existences were vaguely afraid of the dragon race of the Four Seas and the revenge of the Ao clan. One had to know that even in the Tianwu world, the direct descendants of the dragon race of the Four Seas also called themselves Ao. Good guy. One of the desolate demon realm's dragon race who was secretly watching the battle suddenly smiled happily. He could not suppress the pride on his face. Just watching a show and he found himself a powerful backer? This was a huge gain. I have no relationship with the Ao clan. It can even be said that I have no relationship with the forces over there. Therefore, you don't have to worry that after killing me, they will take revenge on you. However, the prerequisite is that Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and said mockingly, "You can really kill me." Hearing this, the mosquito Daoran narrowed his eyes slightly. Because in his opinion, Lin Yuan's words were indeed too arrogant. Not to mention that Lin Yuan was only a person from the ancient era. Even in the chaotic world, other than the gods like Yang Mei and Hongjun, there were not many existences that had lived longer than him. The so-called 5 primordial ferocious insects were all tainted with the primordial qi left behind by Pangu. Those like him who had sealed themselves and did not appear in the world again were not well known. However, he did not believe that Lin Yuan had not heard of the others. In the Journey to the West Calamity, the number 1 was the main character of the Journey to the West drama, the golden cicada who was sent into the samsara by Tathagata and reincarnated as Tang Sanzang. Because of the series of dramas in the Journey to the West, many people might think that the Tang Sanzang who went to the West to retrieve the Buddhist scriptures was the gentle and polite white-faced monk in the dramas. However, before his reincarnation, the golden cicada was infamous in the chaotic world. His original form was a golden cicada with 6 pairs of thin wings on his back. He looked harmless, but he had a huge appetite. Every primitive creature that met the golden cicada would become his food. In addition, the golden cicada's mortal body was indestructible. Not to mention ordinary magical weapons, even divine fire and divine lightning couldn't hurt him at all. In the Journey to the West, there was a famous scene where Tang Sanzang beat the white bone demon 3 times. Because the monkey had beaten the white bone demon's human form many times with his stick, Tang Sanzang was finally disliked and drove away. However, before his reincarnation, Tang Sanzang had killed many more people than the monkey. Moreover, although the monkey was a demon, he had never eaten a human. On the contrary, in his previous life, Tang Sanzang, who was full of mercy, had eaten many innocent souls. In the Journey to the West, some people said that the golden cicada was sent into the samsara to be reincarnated as Tang Sanzang because he and the Tathagata had different views on Buddhism. However, in fact, the reason why the golden cicada was chosen was that the Tathagata wanted to wear down the golden cicada's fierceness. As for the monkey, it was just a show to the Grand Supreme and the others. After removing some artistic embellishments, the truth was so cruel. In the Journey to the West, there was also the 100-eyed demon king, who was also one of the 5 great ferocious insects, the multi-eyed golden centipede. Once the 100 eyes on its back opened, it could emit an infinite amount of golden light. It could break all kinds of dharma in the world and could transform into an immortal body. Like the golden cicada, it was also sent to the Western sect and cultivated into the 1,000-eyed thousand-hand Buddha. There was nothing much to say about the Holy Dragon King's son-in-law, the nine-headed insect. It was also one of the 81 tribulations, and its strength was not below that of the monkey. In the end, the monkey was forced to invite Yang Jian. The two of them worked together to kill one of the nine-headed insect. In the end, the nine-headed insect escaped. The other one was more powerful. It was the nine-tailed scorpion. She had listened to the Tathagata's preaching in the spirited mountain. She accidentally stung the Tathagata and broke his Zhang's 6 golden body. It was so painful that the Tathagata could not preach in peace for thousands of years. Even when the Western sect worked together to capture her, she still managed to escape from the spirited mountain. It was obvious that her poison was strong and her methods were powerful. Although the mosquito Dauren was not famous, he could be called the 5 ferocious insects of the primordial world with the other 4. Whether it was in terms of experience or methods, he was not inferior at all. Although he felt that Lin Yuan was difficult to deal with, it was only in this world. If he returned to the untainted world, the mosquito Dauren would go all out. Even if he could not defeat the existence of the sage realm, he was confident that he could escape unscathed from the opponent if he encountered an ordinary sage to be. Now that he was looked down upon by Lin Yuan, an inexplicable anger rose in the mosquito Dauren. "All right, then let this poor Taoist have a taste of your abilities." The mosquito Dauren shouted angrily, but his body suddenly exploded. In an instant, a deafening buzzing sound had already spread out. Even the surrounding guardians of the heavenly gate who had cultivated successfully could not help but feel their scalps go numb. Looking at the blood-winged black mosquitoes that covered the sky turned into a black tide and surrounded Lin Yuan, it was as if they had already seen Lin Yuan's shriveled corpse. Back and forth, it's still the same 2 moves. When Lin Yuan saw that the mosquito Dauren had once again turned into a swarm of mosquitoes, he immediately spoke sarcastically. However, he did not dare to be careless at all. After all, the most sensitive organ of snakes was their sense of smell. As long as he moved his nose, he could smell a strong and almost choking smell of blood. It was as if what was in front of him was not countless blood-winged black mosquitoes, but the netherworld blood sea that countless powerful people would shrink back at the sight of. Turning into a swarm of mosquitoes was one of the abilities that the mosquito Dauren was best at. When he had killed the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit, he had used this method. Previously, he had wanted to use a similar method to deal with Lin Yuan, but Lin Yuan had blocked him with the netherworld black water. He had even killed many of the blood-winged black mosquitoes that had flown towards him. But now, Lin Yuan's different-colored eyes kept moving because he could not tell at all where the mosquito Dauren's real body was hiding. It was as if every blood-winged black mosquito was the real body of the mosquito Dauren, and it was as if every blood-winged black mosquito was a trick that he had released. Chapter 11:13. Mosquito Dauren can create billions of clones. His real body could be hiding in the swarm, waiting for an opportunity to attack me. It's also possible that all of this is a smokescreen. Mosquito Dauren's real body is hiding in the void, just like what he did at the beginning, waiting for me to reveal a flaw. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly and quickly dismissed the distracting thoughts, coming up with the 2 most probable conclusions. The 5 ferocious primordial bugs were very powerful, but in Lin Yuan's eyes, they were just SOSO. Other than Mosquito Dauren, who disappeared after being sealed as a god, all of them became the whetstones prepared by Tathagata for the Golden Cicada Master. Mosquito Dauren's cultivation was now suppressed to the Demon King realm in the Tianwu world. He could only rely on the mana cultivated in the Eldritch world and the Abijna that surpassed the Tianwu world's system to fight. However, in terms of mana, Lin Yuan controlled the power of incense. With more than 300 million incense, how could he not be able to defeat Mosquito Dauren? In terms of Abijna, Lin Yuan had the system behind him. Even if he followed the Abijna that he came up with in the novels in his previous life, it would be useless. He could connect to the system at any time and find a suitable Abijna from the myriad worlds to turn into a skill. More importantly, Lin Yuan had already pushed Mosquito Dauren to such an extent. Today, one of them would definitely die. Lin Yuan was not worried that Mosquito Dauren would run away. After all, Although he was now facing Lin Yuan, the one who really wanted to kill Mosquito Daoren was the Shangqing Heavenly Lord. If Mosquito Daoren fought with Lin Yuan, the Shangqing Heavenly Lord could only remain silent due to his status as a senior. He could not go out and take sides, right? If he wanted to be involved in this karma, why would he throw the immortal slaying sword formation to Lin Yuan and let Lin Yuan do it? Was it very difficult for Tong Tian to kill a Mosquito Daoren who had left the primitive world? However, if Mosquito Daoren were to use these incarnations to stall Lin Yuan while his real body prepared to escape into the void, even if Shangqing Heavenly Lord didn't do anything, he would directly point out Mosquito Daoren's location and might even help Lin Yuan suppress the swarm of blood-winged black mosquitoes. The most important thing now is not whether I can deal with so many Zergs, but that I have to find Mosquito Daoren's real body before the Zergs get close. Lin Yuan's eyes burned as he scanned the blood-winged black mosquitoes that were approaching from all directions. At the same time, he controlled the Nether Realm's black water to sweep towards them. Head-on and brainless recklessness were two different things. Lin Yuan didn't mind fighting to the death with Mosquito Daoren. Even without the reward of the immortal slaying sword formation, Mosquito Daoren came to the Tianwu world to kill him. If there was a chance, Lin Yuan didn't plan to let him leave alive. However, the black spear in Mosquito Daoren's hand was the mouthpart of the blood-winged black mosquitoes. It was indeed not to be trifled with. The 12th grade lotus platform was formed from the 4 lotus seeds of the primal chaos green lotus. There were 4 of them. The one that Mosquito Daoren absorbed the tier 3 mana was the 12th grade virtuous golden lotus. Although those bodhisattvas and Buddhas seemed to be sitting on a lotus platform each, they were basically imitations. That was because the 12th grade virtuous golden lotus was a treasure used by the receiving Taoist to suppress the fate of the Western sect. Otherwise, if the tier 3 mana was absorbed by Mosquito Daoren, Buddhism wouldn't have appeared 1,000 years late. Even if a treasure that could suppress the fate of a large sect didn't have an extraordinary origin, it was still an existence that couldn't be underestimated. Lin Yuan didn't feel that his physical body could be compared to the 12th grade virtuous golden lotus at all. Without even trying, Lin Yuan was sure that once his physical body touched Mosquito Daoren's mouthpart, the Holy Mother of Turtle Spirit was a classic example. This is troublesome. An obscure radiance flashed across the Shangqing Heavenly Lord's eyes. It wasn't rare for Mosquito Daoren to have billions of clones. Even if his disciple, Turtle Spirit, died under this technique, he could only say that it was an extremely basic technique. It couldn't even reach the threshold of supernatural powers. Most of the insects that obtained this technique knew this technique. They looked like their descendants, but in fact, they were all puppet clones refined by their mother. However, Mosquito Daoren's technique was indeed a little interesting. Mosquito Daoren's real body was hiding in the void, but he didn't show his power. He just followed the swarm of insects and approached Lin Yuan secretly. He was even sure that Lin Yuan had entered Mosquito Daoren's attack range. However, Mosquito Daoren still didn't have the intention to attack. He just commanded his clones to get closer and closer. Obviously, he wanted to continue to close the distance and pursue a one-hit kill, not giving Lin Yuan the slightest chance to fight back. The great Tao of space and the basic technique, coupled with the Mosquito Daoren's mouthpart that could devour anything, it was indeed a little like a supernatural power. If he could use it skillfully, unless he also cultivated the great Tao of space, or he was born with unusually sharp senses, Mosquito Daoren would definitely end up with a one-hit kill in the same realm. I don't know if this Black Jiao can take it. Shangqing Heavenly Lord reached out and touched his chin. His handsome face was still smiling, and there was no emotion of seeing an enemy at all. Lin Yuan's answer was, he could take it. The swarm of blood-winged black mosquitoes looked almost exactly the same. Even if Lin Yuan activated the Eye of God, he couldn't distinguish which one was Mosquito Daoren's real body from the details. However, after trying all kinds of methods, Lin Yuan didn't get feedback from the system. Instead, it was the willow branch that Yang Mei gave to him. The emerald green willow branch kept spinning in Lin Yuan's sea of consciousness. It fixed and pointed in a certain direction. When Lin Yuan looked in that direction, it didn't take long for the willow branch to continue spinning until it fixed again. Obviously, it was guiding Lin Yuan to Mosquito Doran's position. He's really hiding in the void. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's eyes. Among the great Daos, fate, time, and space could be said to be the most difficult to deal with. They could be said to be invincible among those of the same level. This was because the divine abilities and spells derived from these three great Daos were rarely seen by others. They were all existences that could unknowingly take the enemy's life. It was hard to say what level Mosquito Doran's comprehension of the great Tao of space had reached. However, Tianwu world was after all a small world. If one had to make an analogy, it was a world that was stronger than the setting of wind and cloud. However, it wasn't that much stronger. Even if Mosquito Doran knew divine abilities like so close, yet worlds apart, this world couldn't let him use them. Therefore, Mosquito Doran could only use the stupid method of hiding his real body in the void and slowly approaching Lin Yuan. Then, he would wait for an opportunity to make his move. However, using the great Tao of space in front of Ancestor Yang Mei was like playing with a knife in front of a master. Lin Yuan hadn't comprehended much of the great Tao of space from the willow branch. However, against an existence like Mosquito Doran, when holding the willow branch, the methods he comprehended from the great Tao of space were completely useless in front of Lin Yuan. Chapter 11:14. Mosquito Doran, who was hiding in the void, changed his position several times as he gloomily stared at Lin Yuan. He was completely unable to understand why this Black Jiao's senses were so sharp. As long as he stayed in one direction for more than 3 breaths, he would immediately be sensed by the Black Jiao. This forced him to not care about the consumption of his energy. He could only madly activate the great Tao of space, causing himself to constantly change directions in order to inch closer to the Black Jiao. But this way, his plan would be completely disrupted. The spiritual energy in the Tianwu world was extremely turbid. It could not be directly used to replenish Fa Li. It had to be refined and then constantly removed the impurities within the spiritual energy. Only then could it be absorbed. According to the system's data, if Mosquito Doran wanted to replenish 1 unit of Fa Li, he would need to extract 10 units of spiritual energy. Furthermore, of the replenished Fa Li, about 1/3 would be used for purification. Even worse, because of Lin Yuan's constant glances, Mosquito Doran did not even have the time to extract the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. He was practically gritting his teeth as he approached Lin Yuan. Therefore, according to this consumption, when he reached Lin Yuan's side, he would have to explode with his strongest attack. Because his remaining Fa Li was simply not enough to support him in the void while waiting for the right opportunity. Suddenly, large swarms of blood-winged black mosquitoes seemed to have gone crazy. They flapped their wings and accelerated towards Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's eyes did not have the slightest ripple. He only slowly opened his mouth and spat out a large amount of nether realm black water, which melted with the blood-winged black mosquitoes like a black tide. At this moment, a cold light shone behind Lin Yuan. A blood-winged black mosquito actually drilled out of the void and fiercely slammed into Lin Yuan's defenseless back. A diversion. I guessed it. Lin Yuan's lazy voice sounded. Layers of black nether realm water formed a mirror behind Lin Yuan. The blood-winged black mosquito courageously smashed through 6 layers of water shields, almost stabbing into Lin Yuan's flesh. Only then was it melted into water droplets by the 7th layer of water shield. Those blood-winged black mosquitoes that were flapping their wings and making deafening buzzing sounds seemed to have lost their command. Some continued to attack Lin Yuan, who seemed to have let out a sigh of relief. Some froze in place as though they had lost their souls. That's it? In an instant, many of the Heavenly Gate Guardians who were watching the battle had a look of ridicule in their eyes. He had thought that this guy who dared to cross worlds to find trouble with the Black Jiao would be very powerful. In the end, he was like a silver spear with a wax head. He didn't even touch the Black Jiao before he was punished. Are you here to be funny? Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Another beam of cold light broke through the shackles of the void. A blood-winged black mosquito charged towards Lin Yuan from the opposite direction. Ah, I've caught you. However, Lin Yuan had already turned his head the moment the blood-winged black mosquito charged out of the void. He gloomily stared at the mosquito Doran's main body. He did not have much understanding of the space Tao. After all, his natural endowments were there for all to see. Even cultivating step by step was fraught with difficulties, let alone understanding the space Tao. Even the space Tao that he had used to create the limitless demon was borrowed from the willow branch. He had simply copied it. This allowed his limitless demon to have the effect of sealing space. As for relying on himself to sense the location of the mosquito Doran's main body, Lin Yuan did not have this thought at all. Wouldn't it be foolish not to use a treasure when there was one? From the very beginning, Lin Yuan knew that the blood-winged black mosquito that had launched a sneak attack from the void was not the main body. It was a smokescreen that the mosquito Doran had used to confuse him. He wanted to force him to use his trump card, and Lin Yuan had indeed done so. As expected, the moment he used this trump card, the mosquito Doran's main body was immediately shaken out. After all, the consumption of the mosquito Doran's series of actions was not low to begin with. After being forced by Lin Yuan's gaze twice and even preparing a smokescreen, the consumption had reached a new level. Now, the mosquito Doran could really be said to be going all out. With a thought, a willow branch flew out of Lin Yuan's mouth and crashed straight into the mosquito Doran. Immediately, the world was directly isolated and sealed. The willow branch that the patriarch of Yangmei had given him had actually imprisoned the mosquito Doran. This was not Lin Yuan's limitless demonic domain. This was a willow branch plucked from the patriarch of Yangmei's main body. What kind of existence was the patriarch of Yangmei? One of the primordial innate god fiends, the hollow willow, and the carrier of rules. It could be said that the patriarch of Yangmei was the manifestation of the great Tao of space. Once these innate god fiends were born with consciousness, their strength was not inferior to that of a Chaos Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. Obviously, this was because they were born as saints of the great Tao. It could be said that the moment these manifestations of rules were born, they stood at the end of the line in the eyes of countless cultivators and monsters in the universe. To be honest, toying with the great Tao of space in front of the patriarch of Yangmei was an act of courting death. This meant that the mosquito Doran was targeting Lin Yuan, and the patriarch of Yangmei was a very casual person. Otherwise, if Lin Yuan had killed the two fox demons sent by the patriarch of Yangmei, he would have killed Lin Yuan instead of bestowing the willow branch. Therefore, now that the mosquito Doran had attacked Lin Yuan, and the patriarch of Yangmei had no intention of attacking either, Lin Yuan could only use the willow branch to locate the mosquito Doran. However, in a battle between experts, unless there was an absolute suppression of power, even the slightest difference would bring about an irreversible change in the battle. The mosquito Doran had too much faith in his great Tao of space. Even when he was discovered by Lin Yuan at the beginning, he only thought that Lin Yuan's perception was extraordinary. Therefore, if he stayed in a certain void for too long, he would be directly detected by Lin Yuan. However, he did not expect that he was now like a turtle in a jar, being clearly arranged by the willow branch. A fake attack in the opposite direction? Sorry, but the willow branch had been pointing at the real mosquito Doran. The situation was reversed again. Immediately, many of the Heavenly Gate Guardians opened their mouths, but not a word came out. There was no other way. It was too King embarrassing. Previously, they had thought that since this group of people dared to cross worlds to find trouble with the Black Jiao, they would definitely not be easy to deal with. In the end, the two guys who were dressed like generals acted like experts and refused to communicate with the Black Jiao. In the end, the Black Jiao only threw out a red gourd, and the two of them were completely subdued. Later on, when the young man in the blood-red robe attacked, the night market gasped in amazement. After all, no one had sensed that such an existence was hiding in the void not far away. In the end, the Black Jiao did not hide at all. He attacked again and again, but failed every time. Chapter 11:15. He had turned into a swarm of mosquitoes again and again. Originally, they thought that he would play some tricks this time. However, when he turned his head, it was just a feint. His real body could not be hidden from the Black Jiao's eyes. Now, not only was the Black Jiao unharmed, this guy even lost his own life. Brother, are you sure you are here to make trouble for the Black Jiao? Are you trying to make a fool out of yourself with your actions? However, after the banter, these Heavenly Gate Guardians once again realized that the Black Jiao's strength and foundation were probably much more terrifying than their previous evaluation. However, no one noticed that Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a hint of relief. After all, facing the existence of the untainted world directly was not something that these people who had never heard of the untainted world could imagine. Not to mention the Mosquito Doran's law of space, just his innate divine ability that could devour everything was enough to make Lin Yuan fearful. From the beginning, the battle strategy he had chosen was to avoid a head-on collision with the Mosquito Doran. This was also thanks to the existence of the black water in the Nether Realm, which caused him to not want to touch the Mosquito Doran, and the Mosquito Doran was not willing to touch him. Otherwise, there would be no room for maneuver. If the battlefield was in the untainted world, the Mosquito Doran, who could make Kundi and Jane suffer losses, would probably be able to kill Lin Yuan in an instant. But even so, the Mosquito Doran was definitely an invincible existence in the Tianwu world. This was because there was absolutely no movement in the world that could be compared with the law of space. In those novels, when the body movement was deduced to the extreme, it could only give rise to shrinking Earth into an inch, so close, yet so far, and so on. However, this kind of divine ability still used a large amount of the law of space as the foundation to support it. What was the battle record of the Mosquito Doran at his peak? In the Battle of the 10,000 Immortals formation, he killed the Holy Mother of Turtle's spirit. Then, he flapped his wings and went to the Western Paradise to eat the 12th grade virtuous golden lotus. What was this? This was the use of the laws of space. Sun Wukong could travel 108,000 li with a single somersault. Whether or not he could leave the Dongxing divine continent would depend on where he somersaulted, let alone the Western Pure Land. This was the gap between them. In a situation where they didn't have any means to keep the Mosquito Doran in check, it could be said that anyone who came into contact with the Mosquito Doran would die. After all, once they came into contact with the Mosquito Doran's mandibles, they would be sucked dry. Moreover, among the existences that Lin Yuan was wary of, Mosquito Doran was not at the forefront. Hongjuan's generation wouldn't be so shameless as to personally deal with the current him. Or perhaps it could be said that they didn't have the confidence to kill him in the heaven martial world after clashing with the will of the world and the system. So before he went to the great desolate world to face these big shots, the only ones he had to be careful of were their disciples. But among these people, the only one who could really make Lin Yuan unable to fight back was Shen Gongbao. In other words, Shen Gongbao was sent to the investiture of the gods during the investiture of the gods' cataclysm. Otherwise, with Shen Gongbao's skills, if he could successfully become a Chaos Daluo Golden Immortal, let alone Lin Yuan, even existences like Hongjun and Yang Mei would have to be wary of him. Shen Gongbao and Jiang Zia were both disciples of the primeval Lord of Heaven. But the interesting thing was that Shen Gongbao cultivated the Great Tao of Karma. The Great Tao of Karma was definitely one of the best among the 3,000 Great Taos. It was even one of the few existences that could compete with the Great Tao of Fate. Of course, in terms of status, Fate was still higher than Karma. What was Karma? To put it simply, it was to return what one borrowed. For example, Lin Yuan had borrowed the tiger skin of the ancient demon court before, so there was karma between the two. That was why Red Cloud Taoist dared to appear in the Boundless Sea and ask Lin Yuan to repay this karma. Without this relationship, unless the day when the world was repaired, the experts hiding in the dark would naturally fight with each other. Otherwise, Lin Yuan would not necessarily know the existence of these untainted bigwigs who hid him, even until his death. However, the prerequisite of karma was intersection. Only when there was intersection, there would be karma, and only then could people use such a chain of karma. Why was the status of fate higher than karma? Because fate never required two parties to have intersection. The so-called destiny was like this. Some people did things and the results they suffered were all arranged by fate from the beginning. At the same time, fate was also the most mysterious and ethereal great Tao. No matter how hard Lin Yuan thought, he could not think of a few people who cultivated the great Tao of fate. If he had to insist, the so-called great Tao of fate should be the way of heaven. 30% was destiny, and 70% was hard work. No words would appear in this world without a reason. However, after thinking about it, Lin Yuan's fear of Shen Gongbao lessened a little. After all, even though Shen Gongbao was a disciple of the heavenly Lord Yuanshi, he was one of the few outliers in the Chanism. He ignored the consequences of entering the cultivation tribulations without permission and helped DXN to stabilize the Shang dynasty. He was also considered loyal and had recruited many capable people for the Shang dynasty. Without Shen Gongbao, even though the Shang dynasty would not collapse, its time of existence would be greatly shortened. Shen Gongbao had indeed fought to his death for the Shang dynasty. Without talking about the mythical background, the difference between Shen Gongbao and Jiang Zia was obvious. Both of them were citizens of the Shang dynasty. Everything they learned came from the Shang dynasty. They ate the rice and drank the water of the Shang dynasty. Jiang Zia was a member of the Empress Jiang family of DXN. However, he did not hesitate to betray the country and seek refuge with Shi Qi, which was known as never close the door at night, never pick up lost things on the road. However, this was just a later modification. In fact, Shi Qi was poor. If there was no door, how could one close the door? If there was no food at night, what could be lost? Could the Ji family of Shi Qi have a human king? Their ancestral skill was divination and asking for fortune. The so-called King Zhou of Shang dynasty is tyrannical, Feng Ming Shi Qi, was just an excuse made up by Jiang Zia. In fact, to put it bluntly, King Zhou's thinking was too advanced. He wanted to highly centralize power and completely abandon the idea that the royal power was given by God. Therefore, Weizi and DXIN's two sons who had lost the right to inherit the throne joined hands with Jiang Zia, the father and son of the Ji family, to rebel. They even chose the time when DXN was conquering the barbarians and the army had not returned. However, they almost failed to defeat the Shang dynasty. It showed how weak these traitors were. In other words, Jiang Zia, who was called warrior sage by some later emperors, felt that he was old and dying. If he did not rebel against the Shang dynasty, he would die of old age. Then what he had learned would be in vain. Therefore, he did not care about Ji Chang's ominous divination and directly started the rebellion with Ji Chang. If DXIN's brothers and sons were not traitors, this ominous divination was indeed correct. Chapter 11:16. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light. Lin Yuan, who had the mindset of a modern person, did not admire many ancient people. Especially in the field of emperors, there were many useless people. Most of them were raised like pigs by the officials. For example, Emperor Taizong of Tang, who was called the Emperor of the Ages by countless people, was a typical example of someone who was completely controlled by the officials. At the end of the Sui dynasty, the population was around 8.9 million, with an average of 5 people per household. However, at the beginning of the Tang dynasty, the population was only around 2 million. Many people said that it was because Yang Guang did not manage the country well and was ruthless, causing the population to decrease greatly. However, the funny thing was that according to the historical records, the two emperors of the Sui dynasty, starting from Emperor I of Sui, had been investigating the escapees, and the population had always been increasing. During Yang Guang's reign, it had reached a small peak. Not to mention Yang Guang's great achievement of opening the Grand Canal and bringing 2 economic centers to China, just the money and food he had accumulated was enough for the people of the beginning of the Tang dynasty to eat for 50 years without even working. In the history of the dynasties, no one was richer than the Sui dynasty. Was this the actions of an incapable ruler? How far did the Sui dynasty and Tang dynasty have to go to such an extent to be able to wipe out tens of millions of people? Emperor Wu of the Han dynasty, who was known as the Emperor of the Han dynasty, had almost completely emptied the savings of the Wen and Jing emperors. In the northern expedition to the Xiongnu dynasty, the Han dynasty's casualties were only a few 100,000. They had almost wiped out the Xiongnu dynasty and opened up the Silk Road. However, they were still slandered by others as having wiped out half of their household register. Then what should Li Shimin's actions of taking over the Sui dynasty's 8 million people and leaving only 2 million people behind be called? Almost wiping out half of their household register? How many people knew, or were willing to admit, that Li Shimin had been copying Yang Guang's homework? Furthermore, he was not good at copying. Just like how everything in the Han dynasty was taken over from the Qin dynasty, everything in the Tang dynasty was taken over from the Sui dynasty. If not for Yang Guang leaving behind a prosperous foundation for Li Shimin, not to mention the Emperor of the Ages, Li Shimin would not even have a chance to become a wise ruler. This was especially the case for Li Shimin, who revered Confucianism and advocated the rule of the state. He had completely ignored the suppression of the ethnic minorities by those sovereigns who were both Confucian on the outside and Confucian on the inside. He had straightforwardly and efficiently arranged marriages, reparations, books, and technology. In the Treaty of Wei River in the first year of Xinguan, Li Shimin had forced the Turks to retreat, almost single-handedly scaring off an army of more than 100,000 Turks. But in reality, Li Shimin had been schemed against by the great clans, emptying the national treasury to make these vicious wolves retreat. In this period of 20 days, it could not be said that these nomadic tribes had not offended the people of China. Furthermore, Li Shimin's imperial norms had been criticized by others. It was simply a reversal of history. It advocated enfeoffment and wanted the rulers to give up their power to create a country within a country. This was a typical example of a ruler being controlled by the aristocratic families. Most importantly, in the Tang and Song dynasties, Li Shimin was the role model of all the rulers of the Song dynasty. His name was like thunder to everyone's ears. On the contrary, Li Ji and Wu Zetian, who did not learn from Li Shimin, became the rulers of a generation. Li Ji's dynasty had the largest land area in the Tang dynasty. Wu Zetian was even more impressive. Not counting the civil war, she had fought 26 wars and won 21 times. Her land area was even larger than Li Ji's. However, this was Wu Zhou and not Li Tang. The biggest difference between the two was that Li Tang was dominated by Xianbei nobles while Wu Zhou was dominated by Han people. In addition to Wu Zetian's series of reforms, it could be said that before Zhu Yuanzhang, she had tied the emperor to the nobles to the emperor to the people. The aristocratic family's methods were almost ineffective against Wu Zetian. They could only madly discredit her after Wu Zhou was destroyed. Looking at the history of his previous world, there were only a few human kings that could make Lin Yuan feel deep respect. Other than the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, there was no other than Yingjing, Lu Che, Yang Guang, Wu Jiong, and Zhu Yuanzhang. Lin Yuan, who was born as a human, had a natural respect for these human kings. If it weren't for these human kings who risked the destruction of their country time and time again to push the Chinese civilization in the right direction at the nodes of each era, I'm afraid that China wouldn't even be able to enter the 4 ancient civilizations, let alone the existence of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties. As for these human kings, they had left behind endless favors for their descendants. However, almost all of them were labeled as tyrants. The best of them were people who killed people like flies. This was not even counting the human kings with mythological backgrounds. It must be known that even in the mythological world, these human kings had not missed a single thing that they were supposed to do. In Lin Yuan's eyes, even if their merits could not be compared to the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors who enlightened the human race, these human kings were still worthy of the title of emperor. If the human race flourished, these human kings would most likely become human saints. However, regardless of whether it was the Jiangxia of the mythological world or the Jiangxia of the real world, they were all existences that Lin Yuan loathed incomparably. This was a classic example of a traitor who lived off one's family and betrayed another's family. When it came to the Ming dynasty, the great Emperor Zhu Yuanzhang directly carried out the matter of killing saints. First, he killed the second sage Mengzi, then the martial sage Jiang Shang. Then, he appointed Guan Yu as the new martial sage. In the mythological world, Zhu Yuanzhang had cleanly cut off the source of Mengzi and Jiang Shang's incense. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a hint of yearning. Then he heaved a sigh of relief. Yang Guang had been scolded as a tyrant for so many years, but his mistake was that he had lost. He had overestimated the southern aristocratic families at that time, thinking that the Han aristocratic families should work with him to expel the Hu people and take over the mountains and rivers of Han. In the end, his series of reforms made the people with Hu blood in the northern aristocratic families unable to make a living, while he gave the southern aristocratic families taxed the southern aristocratic families and supported the southern aristocratic families. However, because of a series of policies that suppressed the aristocratic families, the Han aristocratic families in the southern aristocratic families chose to watch the fire burn across the river, allowing the Guanlong aristocratic family to skin Yang Guang, the human king, alive. This was also the reason why Lin Yuan wanted to suppress the aristocratic families and sects the moment he established the northern frontier. It was because there were not many good people among these people. Even if there were one or two, their clansmen would be the first to stand up and punish them. For example, Di Xian's brothers, descendants, and the Hongnong Yang family behind Yang Guang were all like this. Although Lin Yuan did not have such troubles, there was indeed no need for such a group of people to disgust him in front of him. As he thought, Lin Yuan poured the nether realm's black water into the sealed space. From time to time, he would turn his head and look meaningfully at Heng and Ha. Heng and Ha felt their hair stand on end. However, they did not know that Lin Yuan had no intention of dealing with them. It was hard to say about Mosquito Daoren, but Heng and Ha would definitely not die in the Tianwu world. After all, they were considered the heavenly court's righteous gods. They only had incense tablets. Chapter 11:17. With the existence of incense tablets, it meant that they could use the incense of the thousands of families to rebuild their original source. Of course, it was hard to say whether the two generals Heng and Ha that were born from the incense of the thousands of families could be considered as their own. But what did this have to do with the heavenly court and the Western sect? They were only interested in the abilities of the two generals Heng and Ha. As long as they were useful, it was fine. After all, they were not the ones who died. But this Mosquito Daoren, not to mention that Mosquito Daoren had disappeared after the investiture of the gods' cataclysm. Even if Mosquito Daoren had made a name for himself like the two generals Heng and Ha, could it change the situation of his certain death? That was obviously impossible. Don't forget, the one who wanted to kill Mosquito Daoren was never Lin Yuan, but Lord Shangqing, who had been silently watching. After having a certain level of cultivation, death was actually not scary. Unless the world in which the three realms of heaven, earth, and man developed harmoniously, there was an existence in the netherworld that no one could afford to offend. Only then would one have to obediently enter the cycle of reincarnation after death. It was not like the three major underworlds in the untainted world, which were just decorations. Not to mention those powerful characters, even ghosts with strong resentment could not be taken away. So what if Empress Pingxin claimed to be invincible in the netherworld? If the 6 heavenly sages came to find her, wouldn't she have to let them go? Ask Empress Pingxin if she dared to directly declare war on the various forces in the untainted world. If Empress Pingxin was alone, she would most likely make Hongjun and the Xian men pay the price at all costs. But speaking of which, Empress Pingxin was never alone. Back then, she was schemed against by Hongjun and turned into the cycle of reincarnation. As a result, the 12 ancestors of sorcerers were unable to set up the great formation of the deities of heaven in the absence of one of them. They could only fight head-on with the demon race. In the end, no one ended up well. The human race who had been hiding in the dark jumped out and created a loophole. Therefore, Empress Pingxin felt guilty towards the sorcerer tribe. Those surviving magi broke into the netherworld and finally found protection from Empress Pingxin. Who would have thought that Empress Pingxin would give up on these magi people and plot against the other gods by any means? If the netherworld didn't have an invincible master overseeing it, or if this master had some scruples, it would evolve into the netherworld of the untainted world. Under normal circumstances, nothing would interfere with the operation of the netherworld. However, when necessary, the reincarnation of the netherworld was nothing. Not to mention the Tathagata, who stuffed the golden cicada into the reincarnation furnace to be reborn, or the Tathagata, who was more ruthless like the Tathagata. He directly let his good corpse incarnation enter the reincarnation cycle and reincarnate into the spring and autumn warring states period, becoming the founder of the Taoist sect. He directly pulled down Hongjun from the altar and completed the transformation from one of the 6 heavenly sages to a sage of the Great Path. He even put the Taoist sect under the command of the Taoist sect and took away the position of the Taoist sect. The 6-soul banner was the ultimate killing move prepared by the Tongtian sect leader in the Battle of the Innumerable Immortals formation. The person who waved the 6-soul banner would inevitably be swallowed by the remnant thoughts of the 3,000 demonic gods. Even this could be done by the sages, who could take out a bit of the true spirit from the reincarnation cycle to reconstruct the physical body. The price to pay was just to think about what gifts to bring to visit Empress Pingxin and how to act obedient so that Empress Pingxin would be merciful. Like the Heaven Martial World, where the reincarnation cycle had not been completed. Sorry, it was the same whether it was a human or a ghost. As long as enough backup plans were prepared, they could complete the Nirvana rebirth. The so-called reincarnation cycle was almost no different from a decoration. When the physical body was destroyed, the primordial spirit ran away. This was something that the living beings of the untainted land were most familiar with. This was because ever since Pangu created the world, the untainted land was constantly undergoing incomparably cruel battles. Almost every day, there would be the fall of almighty people and the rise of new nobles. These were common occurrences. Therefore, even if Mosquito Dauren did not die in the black water of the Nether Realm, it was not a big deal. With Shangqing Skylord watching from the side, Lin Yuan really did not believe that Mosquito Dauren could leave the Tianwu world alive. Did he really think that Shangqing Skylord was just a decoration that only knew how to watch the show? More importantly, if it really came to that step, what did killing Mosquito Dauren have to do with Shangqing Skylord? Everyone saw that Mosquito Dauren was no match for Black Jiao in the battle of magical powers and finally died in the hands of Black Jiao. What did he do? He had merely squashed a lost primordial spirit to death. With a thought, Lin Yuan suddenly calmed down and said in his heart, "System, stop pretending to be dead. Weren't you very active when you were lamenting about the Supreme? Come, tell me where's my Yao core?" The system maintained its silence as usual. Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "It's fine if you don't say it. But the problem is, do you believe that if you don't say it, I'll ask someone else and they'll tell me? Are you threatening me?" After being mocked by Lin Yuan, the system suddenly showed a line of words. Of course, it knew that the someone else that Lin Yuan was talking about was Hongjun. If Lin Yuan asked Hongjun this question, Hongjun would definitely not hesitate and would immediately tell him what was going on with his Yao core. It would not even make any requests to Lin Yuan. Because in Hongjun's view, his actions were to drive a wedge between Lin Yuan and it. When the time comes, without this dead end entering the scene, Hongjun really did not care about the system. This time, the one who remained silent was Lin Yuan. Although he did not reply, the silence at this time was enough to prove Lin Yuan's attitude. "You don't think that I took your Yao core and planned to use it to hold you hostage, do you? Is there a problem with you or with me? You're only one step away from the immortal state now. The Yao core is already something that you can do without. Then why do you think I took your Yao core? I know that it's useless to you, but I still want to hold it in my hand to disgust you?" The system showed the words again, and the words were very thick, as if it was expressing its anger. Hearing this, Lin Yuan slightly narrowed his eyes. What was that saying again? There was no loyalty in the Sui and Tang dynasties. It was the same in the Eldritch Age. In the entire Eldritch Age, there were almost no characters with good character. Lin Yuan also knew that once he stepped into the Demon King age, even if he lost the system, he could still gather the power of incense. With the help of the Tao of totems that he walked on, the Yao core was indeed not that important. However, in the Eldritch Age, there were all kinds of strange ways to kill people. For example, in some unorthodox ways, just knowing the name of a person could make a person extremely unlucky. If it was supplemented by a personal item or hair, it could even complete a long-range killing curse. Otherwise, those Eldritch Age bosses would not have practiced the magical powers that could sense people's names just once. Lin Yuan didn't even dare to think about what kind of blow he would suffer if his monster core was taken by others to perform unorthodox techniques. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.